Torah is just a long string of numbers. Some say that it's a code sent to us from God.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's just good stuff. Check this out, okay? The word for the Garden of Eden, Kedem. Numerical translation, 144. Now the value of tree of knowledge, all right, in the garden, right? Eitz HaChaim, 233. 144, 233. Now you can take those numbers. So
like the Fibonacci sequence?
Fibonacci.
Fibonacci is an Italian mathematician in the 13th century. If you divide 144 into 233, the result approaches theta.
Theta?
Theta. Greek symbol for golden ratio, golden spiral.
Wow. I never saw that before. That's like that series you find in nature? Like the face of a sunflower?
Wherever the spirals.
You see this math everywhere.
And welcome back to the Gnostic Informant, and you are about to attain true gnosis. And joining me once again is Stephen from Cross Bible. Links are in the description. What's going on, Steve?
How's it going?
So your channel, you got some stuff coming out right now, don't you? Why don't you tell us about that real quick before we get into this?
So I just dropped a link in the description to a trailer that's 1 minute long. Please watch the trailer. And this is a trailer for a 1.5 hour long interview filmed by none other than Neil Senlak, the Gnostic Informant. So Neil and I, this is the first stream we've done since we've returned from Hellas, from Ellada, from Greece, Mother Greece. And when we were there, we not only we attended authentic Greek Orthodox Easter services. We were there for Holy Week. We attended services in an 11th century Byzantine church that was built on top of a pagan temple. So one of the oldest churches in Athens. We got to meet the priest there, and we filmed like a sit-down exclusive interview with this guy. Yeah, so that's the trailer right there. The link's here in the description.
Want to watch it?
Sure, yeah, play it. Play the trailer.
All right, let's play the trailer.
It is currently available right now, pre-released on Patreon. So the link is in the description there for the new Cross Bible Patreon. I would really appreciate any support I could get, because this thing, I spent 2 months editing this to get the translation and the dubbing just right. So you can play the audio.
Sorry, so this is the trailer, and the video is what? How long? 2 hours or something like that?
It's an hour and a half. Yeah.
It was amazing. Filming that place was awesome. But anyways, let's play it.
Hi, everyone. This is Stephen Nelson from Cross Bible, and I can't wait to share with you an experience that I had back in April traveling to Greece. Holy Week in Athens, celebrated in one of the city's oldest Byzantine churches, Kapnikarea, an 11th century temple built on the foundation of an ancient pagan shrine to Athena or Demeter. What are the key elements that make Orthodox Easter special compared to Western Easter?
The basis of the Orthodox tradition is Pascha, Easter. It's the resurrection. There is an energy there in the tomb of Christ which cannot be explained. It is the holiest area of the church. The gospel according to Luke. It seeks to show that
I'm holding the camera right now.
That's me. Has been deified. Faith is like a fire. It must burn within you. It must be alive in you.
By the way, look how good that quality camera is.
It is the holiest area of the church.
Yeah.
The gospel according to Luke. It's
By the way, I'm learning how to use the gimbal on the fly. That was not easy, keeping that thing completely steady, even with the stabilizer. It is not easy, but I think it came out pretty good. You know.
Well, the good thing
Just
is
to
that the
show that-
resolution was high enough where there were a few parts where you were trying to stabilize it, and I'm
Yeah.
able to stabilize it in post because
In
I can-
post, exactly.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the point.
'cause-
That's like you kind of have to do that. It's kind of like a necessary part of the process.
This is a
yeah.
human
So
being who
basically,
has-
if anybody goes to the Cross Bible Patreon for $5 a month, you guys can preview this thing. I don't know yet exactly when I'm going to release it to the public. I have a few slight tweaks to make to it. The problem is, we were trying to find a priest who would do the interview with us in English. And when I sent my questions, they're pretty technical questions. I asked this guy about, Orthodox Easter, what makes it different. We conducted the interview in Greek. So, I conducted the interview in Greek, and he answered all of my questions in Greek. And then I went in using AI and basically dubbed it over. I cloned his voice and dubbed it so that you guys could listen to it in English. So that process, what I didn't realize is that if you just use the translation it automatically gives you, it makes a ton of mistakes. So every time he refers to an icona, like that's an icon in Greek, it translates it as image. So I don't want to, I couldn't accept it to go around and be like talking about all these images when we're talking about icons, right? So I had to tweak every single line of the translation, redub it over into English with a normal sounding voice that didn't sound robotic. It took me 2 months.
Took a long time.
We flew to Athens for this thing.
Yeah, you and I were there for different reasons. I was there I'm looking for, that's what I was looking for. I'm looking for ancient pagan spots that were repurposed as churches. I wanted to film those and show those. And this was one of them that was still active, 11th century, which is the 1000s AD, right at the turn of the millennium, where the Crusades are going down. This isn't a hit. Like, that place was being repurposed from its ancient pagan roots. And this, I guess there's conflicting sources. One of them says Demeter, the other one says Athena, so they don't really know which one's right. But yeah, so either way, we know it's a pagan site.
Yeah, like basically the outer colonnade of columns that held up the roof of the pagan temple were taken down and put up in the inside of the church. So you're sitting in there. There are these 4 columns holding up the apse above the main body of the church, and like it's all like the bricks are laid out in like cross formation on the exterior of this church, and those are bricks that they took from the pagan temple and put into the wall. So it's a pretty interesting, and one of the questions I asked him, I'm like, do you think that churches like this that are built on top of pagan temples are sort of like a symbol of the victory of Christianity over, he's like, over the old, idolatry? That's what he calls it, over idolatry. Absolutely. So they're very triumphant in the way that they stamped out the pagan religions.
He was a nice guy. He was a cool guy. But
he was really awesome.
But yeah, that interior with all the icons of like the saints and Justin Martyrs on one wall and St. Paul's on the other wall, and then Jesus in the middle, and the Holy of Holies, and it had the golden grape clusters on it, which reminded me of when I read a passage about Solomon's temple having what was interpreted as being very Bacchic from the source that I was reading. Was it Plutarch who said that? I can't remember who said that. But yeah, so like that, I just thought to myself, wow, even the Christians have that little golden grape cluster in the Holy of Holies, out of all places. I did not know that until we both looked at it.
Well, and he took us for a tour of the Holy of Holies. And so like I was standing on the outside of the iconostasis. Neil had his camera pointing it at the altar.
I got so close, you can see how he was getting like a little bit uncomfortable. Like, no, don't go in there. Don't step in there. My camera was in there. My hands were reaching over. I'm trying to get everything. And you could see him going, okay, back up a little bit. You're too close.
I cut that part out. Yeah.
Did you really?
Like, he was like, well, I thought about leaving it in there because it was cool. Because you see the camera like zooming in to the altar. And then he's like, no, not supposed to go in there.
Yeah,
but
he was getting pissed.
He was being cautious.
No, he just didn't want me to touch anything. Which I understand.
So you guys get a view of like the Holy of Holies, like the sanctuary.
You will see
it. It's called the Toaion Vima in Greek. And a lot of that stuff, like I put the translation up on screen. I really meticulously edited this thing. So If you're able to afford $5 to just go in and sign up for a month in Patreon and support us and watch it, that would really help me recoup some of the the crazy cost and labor that it took to get this together.
Yeah.
If not, hang out for a week. I'll eventually release it to the Cross Bible YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, please. I'll post links to some of the other content that I have on YouTube that pertains to what we're going to talk about today, which is textual criticism.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, go register on Cross Bible if you can. Cross Bible's free. We just released new Bible study tools on Cross Bible that you can sign up for. So like you can take notes now. Like you can go into your favorite Bible, take a note, and then when you come back, like you can sign in on your phone, or you can come back later and all your notes are there. Bookmarking, you can bookmark, you can color code your bookmarks. And soon we're about to release a feature where you'll be able to highlight in your Bible too. So basically all your highlights in your notes, like you can customize your whole Bible study experience and come back to it and it'll be there. Also, I just ordered a batch of Timeline of the Bible posters. This is what we're going to go over today. So this is a timeline of biblical manuscripts that are all color coded according to the textual family that they belong to. And this is available. Right now, right? Yeah. So Neil also has one of these posters. So you can order those posters on the website. They're $35 plus postage. And that's on the crossbible.com website. And then click on
it's very useful. It's very useful for studying this. Like when you want to know, if you want to know like what certain manuscripts are dated to what particular time, you just look up on your poster and you'll see it. It's like I have it right here in my office, and it's a good tool that I use. So, and I use this, like the timeline feature that's on the website, so you can access it digitally on Cross Bible, but you can also order the timeline to put it up. And really, like, you know, I've been studying this for over a decade, and like this is the timeline that I wish I always had when I started learning Greek and when I started learning all about textual criticism. And Cross Bible, this website, like a lot of people ask me why, you know, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? This is really to make it easier for people who are just starting to get into this topic to kind of demystify it. And the YouTube channel is dedicated to a lot of this topic, like the textual history of the Bible, like how we got the Bible in its original languages, because unfortunately, most of us are just reading it in translation. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes, and this is another claim, the Septuagint is from the 3rd century BC. Not the one we have now. It's actually from the 1800s. It's been very much changed a lot. And I just was the other day, I was going through Greek manuscripts. We might get into this today. I'm not sure, but just want to just after this thought, we'll jump into your stuff. There are 4, at least, I think maybe 5 total manuscripts that we have from the ancient world that use the tetragrammaton or yao in Greek. And let me explain. I'm talking about 5 Greek manuscripts, not Hebrew, Greek. So we have 2 from Qumran, 1 from Nehel Hever, and I think 1 from, or it might be 1 from Qumran, 1 from Nehel Hever, and 2 from Oxyrhynchus. So it's either 4 or 5 total that I know. There might be 10 for all I know. I just know these for sure. And the Oxyrhynchus ones have Ya'o, and one of the Qumran one, as Leviticus, has Ya'o in Greek. And then the Nehel Hever one, that's the Greek scribe, changes from Greek into Paleo-Hebrew and writes the tetragrammaton Yahweh. It's like, what? That was how they were doing Bibles back then. And then eventually, by the time you get to these church Bibles in the 4th and 5th century, there's a bunch of reasons why they just no longer wanted to do that. They wanted to go with the uniform New Testament, Old Testament, Kurios, the Lord. That way the New Testament matches up with the Old Testament. There's only one God. He's the Lord. And it makes sense from a church perspective. Why would you have Yahweh in the Old Testament and then the Lord in the New Testament? People are going to go, wait, is there 2 different gods here? So you could see why they did that. Yeah. So and another reason why is because the name is unutterable. And this is a post 70. I looked into this. This is a post 70 AD idea. Before, like, Philo has no problem saying Yahweh or Yao in his writings. Diodorus says it. Other writers who talk about Yahweh in Greek say Yao. All the Alexandrian Greeks that are writing in Greek, all Alexandrians writing in Greek spell Yao or Yahweh. That was not a thing. But at some point, all of a sudden, the name Yahweh became this thing you can't say. Don't say Yahweh, unutterable. And I think they're drawing from the Persephone cult. And that's just my personal opinion. I can't really prove that, but the only reason I'm saying that is because they didn't say Persephone's name in the Eleusinian Mysteries. They called her the quarry. They called her the maid. So I'm just thinking that's another example. And all of a sudden now the Jews are doing it. I'm just thinking maybe they're just borrowing that idea, maybe, or they just both came to that conclusion somehow, you know. And
we went to Eleusis, so we saw it firsthand. The quarry, all of the placards all over there explain that, you know, that Persephone was taboo to say that name, just like it was taboo to say Yahweh or fill in the vowels. Before we get into it, this link that I'm dropping in the chat now, this is one of the original, I made this video about a year ago. This is going to explain in a bit more detail what we're going to get into here. So that's like the history of the Greek Old Testament. You know what? I'll drop a string of links just so they're all kind of in quick succession. The one after that is the history of the King James Bible. So we'll get into that a little bit as well. The history of the Textus Receptus, the Greek text behind the King James Bible. Then we have, then we're going to get into the history of Codex Sinaiticus and the critical text. So that's another video I have. And then, of course, the Greek versus Hebrew, right? If you want to, if you're curious, you're wrestling with the whole topic of why are there only 8,000 words in Hebrew and millions of words in Greek? And how could one come from the other? We're already getting super chats, I can see, of people who are asking about this. So this is going to definitely be something we need.
If you're still asking that question, I'm sorry. If you're still asking, how can one come from the other? You have a low IQ. I'm sorry. You have a low IQ. I can make up a language right now. I can make up a language with a 100 vocabulary. I can make up Dothraki from Game of Thrones, right? I can create my own language. This is just logic. Basic IQ test. Ready for this? Is there someone really asked this? I want to bring their comment up.
You got to bring up the super chat. It's like a $5 super chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looked at your, which one is it? Which one is it? The data set back in the past? I don't see. I see.
Where there was a $5. Oh wait, no. Sorry, it's a $10. It's from Tracy Femstar, $9.99.
That one doesn't say. Not implying that the Greek came first, though.
Okay, what are your thoughts on the Greek as the original? Right.
Okay, let me pull this. Thank you for the super chat, Tracy. And I'm not saying that you're saying this. Maybe you do think this. I don't know. The point is, if you still are following this logic that Hebrew only has 8,000 words, Greek has millions, therefore there's no way you can translate Hebrew into Greek, you have a low IQ. I'm not even trying to be a dick. You do. And I'm just going to explain why this is a basic IQ test. If I just follow along with me for a second, let's say I created a fake language that I just create my own grammar system, my own vocabulary, and I base it off the Dothraki from Game of Thrones, which is a real thing. There is a real language that was made up called the Dothraki language based on the Game of Thrones books, A Song of Ice and Fire. The vocabulary is probably maybe a few hundred, maybe 1,000, nothing, right? If I wanted to, in theory, not even in theory, in fact, if I wanted to take the Dothraki language and translate it into Greek, I can. Can you explain why I couldn't do that? Unless you can prove that I can't do that, then this is nonsensical bullshit. Think about what you say. When somebody says something to you like that, think about it. Play the tape through. Challenge it. Don't just accept it because you want it to be true. Think about these things. I can make a 5 vocabulary word. I'll do it right now. Ready? Check this out. Dot, D-O-T, means the. Job, J-A-U-B, means cat. Okay? I'm making up a new language right now. Flala, F-L-A-L-A, means jumped. The cat jumped, and I'll say, and then I'll do like a noun that has a form that you can go to this noun. So like to buffalo, and I'll put Jabba buffalo. Jabba buffalo means to buffalo. The cat jumped to buffalo. Dot job flala jabal. Translate that into Greek right now. You know Greek. The cat flew into buffalo. Say it. Just say it right now. The cat jumped into buffalo.
I eluros pidise iston buffalo.
There you go. You just translated a language with a 5-word vocabulary. I just made this language up. 5-word vocabulary. You just translated into Greek.
Yeah,
millions of word vocabulary. You just translated into Greek. How the fuck was that? Think about when you say these dumb things, people. Please. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, how would you steelman the argument that the word quantity discrepancy somehow indicates the direction of the translation? Like,
it's nonsensical. If I tried to steelman it, the steelman is you can't translate this because I can't even steelman it. How do you even steelman it? Can you? You can't. Why can't you you can translate anything into anything. Anything can get translated into anything.
I think it's generally invalid. So it's hard to steelman something that's like on its face invalid.
Right.
But the reason it's invalid is, look, if I can share my screen for a second, I'll explain why it's invalid. Yeah. So we're talking about the quantity of lemmas, of like just sort of base dictionary forms of words that we find in the Greek language. And there are so many. And it gets brought up like, why are there so many? Like if there's so many Greek words, if there are millions of Greek words, and there are only that are tested, that survive in the literature, and then we only have 8,000 in Hebrew, how can you go from an 8,000 word language into a 250 million word language? And here's 279,743 lemmas, right? It's 126 million tokens, words, right? And so if you're basically taking the Greek language that is digitized, that is preserved throughout antiquity and the Middle Ages, and now digitized in this huge database, and they've totaled they every single word, if you add them all up, it's 126 million words. Yeah. But there are words like theos that happen 550,000 times. So if you take so if you condense it all down into 278 lemmas, then basically, if you make a dictionary of that, you have a dictionary that's this thick that has 278,000 head words, right? That's how many words survive in Greek, because we have literature from this entire period, from the 8th century BC all the way to the modern period, which, by the way, includes vocabulary from modern Greek.
That goes back to my point. When your sample size is small, that doesn't mean you can't translate it. The amount of vocabulary does not determine translatable, or if it's translatable or not, or if you can translate a low. You can take the most dumbed down barbaric language and make it into Greek, and then you can take that Greek and even spice it up and make it look and make it you can addicize it. You can make it. You can 10 times the amount of what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? Multiply. Make it more. Expand. Yeah, make it more sound like it's more whatever, like more. I can't think of a word right now. I don't know what's wrong with me. You know what I mean? You get what I'm saying?
Make it elevate it.
Elevate it. Yeah, elevate it into a more
to a
higher degree of like a vocabulary, of grammar. You can do all types of things in translation.
Yeah, so you can make it. Yeah, you can elevate the register. That's usually what.
That's what a good translator usually does. You don't. Yeah. So this is what I don't understand. When this is why I think Amon Hillman is not dumb. I think he's being dishonest because he knows translating a text does not just mean I take a word and I find the translation of the word and I put it there. And then I go to the next word and I put that word there. It means you have to take the whole sentence as a whole and come up with the best translation based on the audience you're trying to give it to. You don't just translate word for word and put it there with a bunch of jargon. So, of course, when you read the Septuagint, it comes off as a composition, a readable, good composition, a fluent, good, readable composition. because that's what a good translator is supposed to do. Read Thomas Taylor's translations of the ancient epics. They're amazing. They don't feel all clinky and weird, or like they feel like a real composition. If you didn't tell someone it was a translation, you might not even know. You might think Thomas Taylor wrote that.
Well, and the person who gets cited, the person who is usually cited, who's, like if you Google how many words there are in Hebrew, typically what you land on is a citation from a scholar named Gilad Zuckerman. Now, he wrote a book called Revivalistics that usually gets cited. It's like on the Wikipedia page. And I reached out to him when I was doing the research for the video that I have on the Cross Bible official channel. So it's linked here in the description, where I displayed all of this information. And his feedback on this whole idea of like, okay, so because Hebrew has 8,000 attested words, therefore it's fake. He was just, what he does, he's actually a language revivalist. So he travels around Australia and revives Aboriginal languages that have been lost because people are speaking, the younger generations are speaking English, and they've forgotten the Aboriginal languages of their ancestors. So he's going through and restoring those languages and developing writing systems with them. He's an on-the-ground researcher. And he told me that, first of all, that's total BS, right? And he's a native speaker of modern Israeli Hebrew. And he said that when I revive a language and I go into these communities and work with them to revive their ancestral language, 4,000 words is actually all we really need as a baseline to kind of communicate on a basic level.
Right.
So 8,000 is a pretty good vocabulary size to get your point across on a variety of subject matter. And what you're seeing right here on screen, like Neil, like you've seen this before, right? Like can you explain what you're seeing here?
Well, that's the count in the amount of words.
Yeah, but this is Homer. So if you go into the TLG database and you just look up how many words are attested in Homer, it's 9,942, more than the Hebrew Old Testament, but not much more, like 1,000 more.
Well,
right?
No, because Homer has more. I think all the New Testament combined, Homer's shorter than that, right? No? I think Homer's longer.
Well, he has 200,000 words. 200,000 words in the Iliad and the Odyssey combined.
Yeah,
those two works.
And how many words are in how many words are in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible?
How many words are in the Hebrew Bible? I have this on another slide, but let's just Google it. Okay, so 306,000. So basically, the corpus sizes are comparable.
Yes,
Homer has.
Now there is an argument to be made based on that Greek has a more sophisticated language, just more words that can be used based on the fact that Homer has a shorter, the amount of Homer is smaller, but he's using more words in that smaller amount. It's not a lot. 8,000 and 9,000 is not a big difference. That's a substantial amount. It's not a little bit. And then 300,000 to 200,000 is kind of a substantial amount. So you can make the argument, and I'm fine with this. I'm totally on board with this. Greek is a more sophisticated language, just based, and that's evidence for that. What we just pulled out is evidence. Homer's using way more diverse language to get to for synonyms. A lot shorter, more synonyms, more different. It's more sophisticated, right? That's fine. But the idea that translates into, therefore, we can't translate Hebrew into Greek. Brain does not compute anymore. You've lost me. You're in outer space now.
Well, but analogously, look, if we were in a scenario where Homer, like let's say in the classical period, Plato and Aristotle like didn't write anything, everybody just copied Homer for thousands of years, and then later, like all the Greeks had was Homer. They had no other literature. It would be a very analogous situation to what we have here in modern Jewish culture with the Hebrew Bible and commentary on the Hebrew Bible. They have a limited corpus, and so they have a limited set of words. We wouldn't look back at that and say, oh, Greek only has 9,000 words. Right. Just because all we have is Homer. If you go into Plato, then Plato has a bigger vocabulary than Homer, right?
And Plato's
13,000 words.
Plato also has all this to go off.
500. He has 590,000 tokens.
Giant Bible. He's got his own Bible, basically.
That reduced into 13. And what's even more gigantic is Aristotle. Aristotle's got a whopping 20,000.
Aristotle looks like
1 million words.
That's Aristotle right there. That's the works of Aristotle.
1 million words. So in terms of the competition between Greek and Hebrew, like once you're just dealing with a huge volume. Once you get to the Septuagint, though, because the Septuagint is also indexed in the TLG, including the Apocrypha, so it's not a fair number.
Little
Yeah,
baby.
so we got 15,000 lemma. So we're not comparing apples to oranges here if we're comparing 8,000 words in Hebrew to hundreds of thousands of words in Greek. It's not a fair comparison, because when you get to the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, you only end up with 15,000
You had the
lemmas.
same
Now,
Septuagint as the image that I have.
yeah, that's
Is this like the best one or something? I don't know.
No, it's Brenton. It's
Oh,
Brenton's
it's the
Daiglot
1850.
edition.
Yeah, the
that
1856.
has the English in and this is
The one that
Bible,
some people, there's a group on the internet that thinks that this is the original Bible from 3rd century BC.
We're gonna get into that.
It's almost as nonsensical as when people say Constantine wrote the Bible. Like, what you're doing is you're just ignoring simple facts that are undeniable on the ground. Like, for example, I already brought this up, but I'm going to bring it up again. For example, if you think the Septuagint that you read online and that Amun shows on his channel is from the 3rd century BC, you either don't care about truth, or you haven't researched this, or you're probably have a low IQ, one of the three. Because look, this right here proves otherwise. This is the 1st century BC. Remember, I told you there's 5 of these. 5 manuscripts in Greek that have the name for the divine name of God in the Greek. This Bible does not have that. Therefore, they're not the same Bible. There was edits. That doesn't mean there's a million edits and it's a completely different Bible. I'm not saying that it's a completely different Bible. I'm just saying there were edits. There are changes. It's not the same Bible anymore. You have to admit that. You can't just say you have the original. You don't. And then if you point the finger at the Masoretic text and say that's from the 10th century AD, it's a double standard, because you're literally using a Bible from 1800s and going, that one's 10th century AD, haha. When in fact, that Masoretic text that we have from the 10th century AD, the what is it called again? The
Leningrad Codex.
Leningrad Codex. That Leningrad Codex is just as much changed, which means not major changes, but a little bit grammar changes, a little bit of nouns maybe changing, something like that, some little spelling errors compared to what we find in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So if you took the Leningrad Codex compared to the Dead Sea Scrolls, you're going to find differences, a lot of differences, but it's not as big of a difference as the Septuagint that we have today. And the Septuagint it's almost the same thing if you think about it.
Well, this is a good segue into the main topic. To wrap up what I was showing here on screen, when you get down in that chart, and this is in my video, I explain this in detail, so go watch that. And links in the description. Go to Cross Bible Official. The New Testament only has 6,000 lemmas, right? Like there are fewer words, sort of unique dictionary forms of words in the New Testament Greek than there are in the Hebrew Bible, because the Hebrew Bible is just more expansive than the New Testament. Now, if you go to crossbible.com and you go onto the timeline of the Bible, or if you order one of the posters, right, you can see this on the poster. You will note, first of all, that like the Old Testament, right, the Hebrew Bible runs along the top. Okay, so if you're interested in the history of the Hebrew Bible, it's going to run along the top. Mm-hmm. And I'll share my screen. I think we're looking
before I get there. I just wanted to go see this real quick. So this is the other example. I just wanted to give you one more example. I told you there's 5 of these. I already showed you one from Qumran, and that was from Leviticus. This one is from a different part of the Bible, from the Greek Minor Prophets scroll at Nahal Hever. And now check this out. This is so crazy. This is so mind blowing. That's obviously, what language is that, Stephen? When you look at this, just from a frog, don't do any like the whole thing. What do you see?
I see Greek letters.
It's Greek. It's not Hebrew. Okay, we know it's Greek. You can see the phi, the alpha. It's Greek, right? But check this out. Where it sees that arrow, where does it point to? There is the name of Yahweh in Hebrew. They took the Greek. This is so cool to me. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with this now. The Greek scribe at Nahal Hever, or wherever he was, if we found it in Nahal Hever, the Greek scribe was writing in Greek and switched to Hebrew, and then went the other right to left to write Yod He Vav He, and then it goes back to Greek again. It's fucking sick. It's so crazy. I don't know why I love that so much. Anyways,
it's an awesome
I just want people to understand that your Septuagint is not the original. period. That's a brute fact. You can't argue otherwise. And when me and Amon were friends, we had a back and forth about this. In fact, it was the same day he debated Kip Davis. It was the same day. It wasn't about a couple hours before we had that stream. Me and him were doing a Greek lesson. I was in like unit 3 or something. And then after we were done, I was like, come on, dude, you really think the Septuagint is the original? I was like, you really think that? And he was like, yeah, this is why I think that. And he brought this. So he gave some arguments, and I was like, but it's not the. I go, your Septuagint's not the original. You know that, right? He was like, what do you mean? It was written in the 3rd century. Then I showed him the Ya'o thing, and I swear to God, and I don't care if anyone call me a liar because I can't prove this. I don't have it recorded or anything, but I swear to God, he goes, I hate you for this. You ruined this. He was pissed because I proved him wrong, and he admitted it. He goes, I hate that you're so good at this. That's what he told me. He was being sarcastic, but it was a sarcastic way of saying, dude, good fucking point, dude. And then so I thought after that day, he was going to update his theory a little bit and go, well, we don't have the original Septuagint, but most of it's still probably part of what we had back then. So let's base it off this. No, he just pretended that he never heard that. He just does go. This is when I realized Amon is not really that honest, because he can get new information that conflicts with his worldview and just deflect, just ignore it. He does not care. He does not care about information that deflects that goes in. Anyways, I think we heard enough about this.
Yeah, let's not make it all about him. So to start, the section of the timeline here that shows the biblical books, let's just make one thing very clear at the start. So the Old Testament, the canonical Old Testament, the one that Christians and Jews consider canonical, that has the Pentateuch and the poetry and the latter, major prophets and the minor prophets and the historical books, blah, blah, blah. These were all originally written in Hebrew, right? However, there is a whole slew of like books over here on the right, the Greek additions to Daniel, the Greek additions to Esther, the Maccabean literature, Baruch, the prayer of Monasek, the wisdom, the books that are included in Catholic and Orthodox Bibles that are called Apocrypha by Christians and Deuterocanonical by those who have them in their Bible. Those were originally written in Greek, right?
Yeah.
They have all of the hallmarks.
Quite a few.
They have all of the hallmarks of original Greek compositions, and there's no reason to, like, we've known for thousands of years that these were all originally written in Greek, and that is part of the reason why they are relegated to the Deuterocanon, right? Like the ones that have been enshrined in the canon, we know those were originally Hebrew, and I mean we as in the public who is informed by the scholarship. But that doesn't mean that all, like, there are huge sections of Daniel that were original Greek compositions.
Right.
They have wordplay.
And that's why when you look at these pseudepigraphid sources, these are Old Testament remixes, if you will, to use a modern term. They're like they're apocryphal remixes of Old Testament literature, and their original compositions are Greek. Most of them, not all of them. Some of them are Hebrew, some are Aramaic, some are Latin even, but most of them are Greek. And so in the Hellenistic period, you do find a lot of Greek original sources. We're not here to play on Team Hebrew versus Team Greek. That's silly to me. I don't care which one came first. If I had to choose, I want the Greek to be first. I like Greek better. Just my personal opinion. I don't care about which one I like better. I care about what the facts on the ground are, which is what we're trying to figure out. Otherwise, what are we doing?
But when people who are pushing the Greek first theory, like when Danny Jones asks, like, well, how could you possibly know which was first? Well, we know that we know what the pattern looks like. When something's originally Greek, it has the hallmarks of an original Greek composition. Scholars are not confused by this. This is not like when you're an expert in like Greek and Hebrew and you study these sources, the textual critics who do this for a living, nobody is like racking their brain like, oh, was Isaiah originally this is settled. We know that this group over here, this group over here was Hebrew, this group over here was Greek.
And especially when you start noticing the like the nouns being transliterated to Greek that aren't, or certain words that are in Hebrew being transliterated to Greek now, and then you look at those words and you go, This word's in the Septuagint and nowhere else in the entire Greek language. Then you look on the Hebrew side and you find that Hebrew word is all over Canaanite literature, maybe even falls back to Babylonian. You find that word in other Semitic sources, Aramaic, whether it's Syriac. You find variations of that word, which tells us it's probably from Hebrew. Those are the things we're looking at. And then so yeah, it's settled because of things like that. When you know things like that, and this is one of the things I noticed. People will go, well, how do you know if you're not a Greek expert, how do you know that the Septuagint is an original? But I've never heard anyone say, if you're not a Hebrew expert, how do you know it's not an original Hebrew? So it seems to be no one even cares if you're not. You don't have to be an expert in Hebrew to criticize the Hebrew. You just have to be an expert in Greek. Wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. Wouldn't it be both ways? To start going into the Hebrew to discovering if the Hebrew is original, you would have to know some Hebrew. Just in the same sense, to understand Greek and be able to do critical textual criticism of the Greek, you have to know Greek, right? Isn't this common sense? But for some reason, people who've never even studied one day in Hebrew are telling us this isn't an original composition. People are listening. Just something to think about.
And we should maybe briefly touch on the Africanus to Origen letter, right? So like the observation that, hey, these Greek additions to Daniel, they don't fit. Like they are a different breed of text. And Africanus made this observation that like, if you really look at this, you got like prinon, prisin, skinon, schistine. Like he's pointing out like
argument.
Yeah,
Africanus,
like this is.
So let me just tell people what's going on here. Africanus is arguing to Origen that the apocryphal story at the end of Daniel. So the story of Susanna, and there's also one called Bel and the Dragon. They are included at the end of Daniel. So it's written by Daniel, whoever wrote Daniel. If you just can go back to that real quick.
Sorry, just let me show this image to explain what you're talking about.
Okay,
it's right. My scroll wheel doesn't work. Okay, here, boom. We got Daniel in Hebrew, and we have Greek additions. We have the prayer of Azariah, the song of the three holy children, Susanna, Bel and the Dragon.
Are these all 2nd century BC?
I don't know when the Greek additions to Daniel date. Probably 2nd century BC, first. But they get inserted into Daniel in the Greek version.
Yes.
Right. And now I'll go back to the example.
Yeah. And so I'm glad you brought that up. So you have these and they knew this. Origen knew this. Africanus knew this, and that's why they're talking about it. So Africanus is making an argument, and it's a great argument. I think it was Kip who did a video and saying like it could have been Hebrew first, and just kind of hand waved off this right here, and I just was like, well, why are we doing that? Like, let's just grant this is a good argument. He's showing the sort of cadence, the pre, ski, pre, ski. Like that sounds like an original composition. Now, can you do that in a translation? Sure. I brought up Thomas Taylor. Thomas Taylor was translating ancient Greek and making it rhyme and do all kinds of cool little meters he was doing. You can do stuff like that. But is it more likely that this is the translation when the other one's not doing that? The other one's a little bit clunky, as he points out. This one has way more of a flow and a cadence going on. In this particular case, Africanus, I think, convincingly argues that the Greek is original here.
Because it's using verbs and nouns that have the exact same root. And when you translate that back into Hebrew, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work the same way. And now, but then at the end, this is the part that got me so much. You're on a podcast talking to millions of people, and you tell them, millions of people are watching, and you can just sit there with your PhD and go, oh, does anyone agree with you about this? Yeah, there's one person who agrees with me, and it's Julius Africanus. The question you were asked, Amin Hillman, was, is there anyone who agrees with you that the whole Greek Old Testament, not one sentence, the whole Greek Old Testament came first? And he says, yeah, or Africanus agrees with me. No, he doesn't. Africanus says this one book was in Greek, and then look at the last sentence. He says, ex Hebreon de tois elese. Yet everything else is from Hebrew into Greek. Everything else. Africanus does not agree with you. So to go back to your answer, hey, Amen, does anyone agree with you on this? No, no one
No.
agrees with me. I'm just the only one saying this ever in history.
Yeah. So, so the thing is, though, so we've established that there are original Greek writings in the Bible. They just aren't in the Protestant Bible. They're in the Orthodox Bible and the Catholic Bible, right? They're in the Deuterocanon. Now, when we pick up a Septuagint today, right, what we are reading, let's go all the way to modern times and look at the different Septuagints that we have, these different flavors of Septuagint, right? Now, the one that we were talking about earlier is Brenton. Brenton is over here in the 19th century, right? Tischendorf put together a Septuagint. Like these are all heavily based on the 4th century majuscule Bibles, like the complete Bibles, the Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Vaticanus. We'll get into those, right? So they have the Septuagint included, and critical editions of the Septuagint were published with basically just transcribing them, printing them. That's what you get in Sweets. That's what you get in Brenton's. That's what you get in these early scholarly editions of the Septuagint until you get into the 20th century and then into the 21st century, where you then have the Ralph Hanhart critical edition of the Septuagint. So these Septuagints and the Göttingen, so these Septuagints that are more modern are actually, they are more up to date than Brenton's. And as far as I recall, you mentioned that Brenton's tends to be the version of the Septuagint that's used by this community that has this Greek first.
Well, it's because when you search Septuagint online, Pete, search Septuagint, and it's 99% of the time going to spit at you the Brenton's version. Usually.
It's very accessible. Yeah.
Exactly.
To be fair, like, so on Cross Bible, let's say, like, so I'm on Deuteronomy 32:43, an example that we're going to go over. So here I'm comparing the New American Standard Bible, which is, you can't see the popover menu here, but this is a translation. So the New American Standard is a translation of the Hebrew Masoretic text, which we'll get into. The ESV is also a translation of the Hebrew Masoretic text, but it borrows a bit more liberally from the Septuagint when needed. Here I have the Ralph's Septuagint. I think it's the 1935 edition. But we also, I could swap that out on Cross Bible for Sweet, for example. Let's see if I can update Sweet, and boom. So now you see this is Sweet's Septuagint. Or if you wanted to use, what is it? So Brenton's Septuagint, I can throw in Brenton's. I can throw in English's, the Brenton's English version too, and you can hold those side by side. So Cross Bible has a lot of these different versions of the Septuagint that you can compare side by side. They usually agree with each other, but there are differences. And the differences are because there's been scholarly work done in the last, couple hundred years to establish, well, what were the original readings of the Septuagint that were not corrupted by revisions of the Septuagint that were gravitating the text towards the Hebrew Masoretic text. So this is the issue, is that there are three different text types of the Old Testament. There's the Masoretic text family. There's the Septuagint, the LXX, the Greek Old Testament family. And then there's the Samaritan Pentateuch, which is its own category. Now, if you go all the way back to the beginning of the timeline, you can see that by the 5th, 4th century, we're not dating when the Hebrew Bible was actually composed, but there were proto versions of each of these textual families that go back to some Hebrew original. And in the 4th or 5th century, there was a Hebrew original that was translated into Greek in the 3rd century. This is the Old Greek, the OG, that's abbreviated OG in scholarship, LXX, right? This would have only been the Pentateuch. That was the original translation project, according to the story. And then eventually it would have been expanded into the prophets and to the writings, and the whole Bible, including the Deuterocanon, would have been translated or originally composed in Greek in many cases. And then immediately after, in the 1st century BC and 1st century AD, at the turn of the century, around the same time that the Dead Sea Scrolls are being compiled and copied and written, you have revisions of the original Greek Septuagint in Greek that are being updated based on the growing popularity of the Proto-Masoretic textual family.
Okay. I was gonna say there's a few super chats that are pretty on topic, and I just found
Okay.
maybe we can bang a few out and then we can keep
Yeah.
going. What do you think?
Yeah, please.
Okay. And you can keep Cross Bible up. It's helping out a lot for sure.
Yeah.
So Eric Shaver was been waiting for a while. The Bible was written in the future. It's data sent back into the past, where it was transcribed from auditory hallucinations. If time travel is real, this might be true. Theoretically, if time travel is real. Thank you for that super chat. Pismooth drops a 99-cent sticker. Always appreciate those 99-cent stickers. Always. Thank you. We already did you, Tracy, but thank you again for the super chat. And Eric Shaver, I think you did it twice, so I'll read it again. The Bible was written in the future. The data sent back to the past, where it's transcribed from auditory hallucinations. Thank you, Eric Shaver, for the super chat. Here's a good one. Constellation Pegasus says, thank you for the $20. Thank you. Appreciate that. Looked at your Cross Bible app. Is there any Jewish commentary in there, like Rashi, that could be very contradictory for sure, but needed? Is there a Hebrew Bible there at all?
Well, I mean, there is the Hebrew, the Westminster Leningrad Codex is there in Hebrew. I have the 1911 JPS Tanakh and from the Jewish Publication Society, and I have emailed the Jewish Publication Society on a few occasions to request the updated version of the JPS Tanakh. The problem is that the website is called Cross Bible because it is a cross-reference Bible. So we are working on a cross-referencing feature and a gospel synopsis that will cross-reference between the gospels. But it's a Christian website, so unfortunately, Jewish publication societies and people who own the rights and control the rights to digital copies of Jewish study resources, they're not really that excited about granting the rights to a Christian website to display their Bibles. I would love to get as many resources as I possibly can, but anything you find on Cross Bible is either in the public domain, or I have licensed it from a publisher or a Bible society.
Yeah, it's not as simple as you think. It's not like you're just uploading Bibles into there for free. Like that would be nice if you can do that, but it's the world of copyrights does not work that way. Thank you for that.
Well, we have to play by the rules.
Yeah. Daniel Kyle's dropping memberships. Oh man, thank you, Daniel. I really appreciate that. Member for 10 months. I think ritual aspects of Yahwism were passed down and the law was formed. Deuteronomist reform was in the Hellenistic period. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty, I think that's spot on. What do you think about that?
Well, and you're about to get Ian Young on the channel, so that's going to blow the lid off of a lot of dating assumptions on the Old Testament.
Yeah. Ian Young is a scholar of the Hebrew Bible. And he's been saying for years and just not getting traction because even he said this field of biblical studies is just has a very weird, I don't know. Let's not just, there's some dogmas, right? There's a lot of church institutions at these accredited universities, right? Just the way it is. Biblical studies. People study the Bible because they're Christians. Well, he's been showing he's been screaming from the rooftops, but like the linguistic dating has flaws. So I'm getting him on here to talk about it. I can't wait. Like he's up there with the Yonatans and the Gads and the Gemerkins, and he's up there with. I'm going to put him on that Mount Rushmore of people destroying the idea of the Bible being old. It's going to be Ian Young is going to be the new fresh face on this list. I'm going to make him famous. Ian Young, Gad Barnea, Jonathan Adler, Russell Gemerkin. That's I can't wait.
I can't wait. I've been emailing Ian Young for like a decade now, trying to convince him to make a public appearance, and he's been too shy up until now. And now he's ready to come out and play. So
it's going to happen. Thank you for that thank you for the memberships. I appreciate that. Eric Shaver, once again, with the one more $10. Thank you. Appreciate it. Phonons sent from the future into the past can stimulate music in minds of apes who can convert the energy into colors, numbers, and patterns ascribed to a language. Damn, let me get my DMT vape out right now. What do you think about that?
No comment.
All right, so let's get going. I'm going to grab my tea that's been waiting for me. I'm going to be right back, but you could start off with this. I'll be back in 2 seconds. Okay,
so let me explain something real quick. So what you see here are the various, like, let's orient ourselves in time, shall we? So we're lost all my windows. Okay. So we are in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th century AD. And we are looking at representations of the revisions of the Greek Septuagint. Now, you can see that the abbreviations that we're giving for this in the timeline are LXX-MT. So here's the inherent contradiction. Here's the problem. The Septuagint is a completely different textual family from the Hebrew Masoretic text. But here what we have is the merger of the two. So what's happening is, and this is like a lot of it's fragmentary evidence, like we don't have the manuscripts of Aquila and Symmachus and Origen's Hexapla. Like we have very, very few manuscripts. And if you go onto the timeline, you can read more about this stuff here. You can open up these windows.
Hesychius produced the Bible?
That's a different Hesychius.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Say,
So and then and Lucian. So the Hesychius of Jerusalem, a 4th century bishop and biblical scholar. So again, you go onto the timeline of the Bible, you can just open up these little windows and learn about this stuff. So what's happening is that by this time, the Hebrew Masoretic text is, we're talking about like after Christianity, the emergence of rabbinical Judaism, and sort of the end of textual plurality in the Hebrew Bible tradition, right? So basically, like, if you imagine that in early Christianity and 1st century and AD, BC, you had different kinds of Greek you have different varieties of Hebrew Bibles that were floating around. And by the time you get 2nd and 3rd and 4th century, the Christians started to become uncomfortable with this because they had Greek Bibles that had a lineage, that had a pedigree that went back to this early tradition of translating from Hebrew sources that were lost. Those Hebrew sources went away. The Jews weren't, the Jewish communities were not using them.
One of the prime examples of this is the book of Esther. The book of Esther in the Greek side has this long expanded version. And on the Hebrew side, it's this little tiny little version. And it looks like the Greek has some other is attesting to some older Hebrew version that was lost at some point.
That was lost. Yes.
Yeah,
exactly. So the inherent problem is that we have an unbroken chain, more or less, like, with some modifications. We have an unbroken chain of what used to be this Proto-Masoretic text that was copied into the Dead Sea Scrolls, along with copies of the Hebrew sources behind the Septuagint, right? And also the Hebrew sources behind, the Samaritan Pentateuch. We have all of the different text types here in the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's why it's colored with this dark gray, like kind of black color, because the Dead Sea Scrolls collection is eclectic. It takes from all of these different Hebrew sources. And this was a huge bombshell revelation in the 20th century when all of this was decoded. Like, oh my gosh, we finally found the Hebrew that backs up the Septuagint in many cases that we're going to go over. This was a huge revelation because up until then, all we had was the Greek version that seemed to be like really different from the Hebrew in a lot of cases, and we couldn't tell why. It was probably just, the theory was like maybe it's just poorly translated. It was corrupted in this tradition. So like, I consider this process of what's called recension, where you're taking the old Greek version, you're comparing it to the Hebrew, you're seeing that there are differences, and you're fixing the Greek, you're doctoring the Greek to make it match the Hebrew more closely. That is called recension, right? That is called revision. They're revising it, they're resending it to make the Greek match the Hebrew more closely. And in turn, what they're doing is they're corrupting the tradition. If you consider the predecessor, like whatever was translated from this original Hebrew, it's gone. Like they wiped the slate almost clean, with the exception of certain manuscripts like Papyrus 967, which is labeled OGLXX Daniel. This is a very rare, very old example of a manuscript that actually preserves the OG, the original Greek version of Daniel, which, which in many cases reflects a Hebrew text that is better, or at least like more original or more informative of what the original would have said than what we have in the later Masoretic tradition, right? The Masoretic text we can see is it's compiled in the 7th, 8th, 9th century. It is reflected in the Aleppo Codex, the Leningrad Codex primarily, and in Codex Sassoon. Like it is represented in these manuscripts. and their version of Daniel is substantially different than the Greek version. And the Greek version is reflecting an older Hebrew tradition. And so in this case, what we're dealing with, like in the case of Daniel, is we're dealing with Greek primacy, like Greek priority. And there are scholars that have legitimate theories of Septuagint priority, where basically they're not saying that Greek came first as a language. They're saying that the Greek version, the Greek variety of the text, is actually older
and this
than
is why
the Hebrew.
And this is why people were like offended. And I like, that might be the best word to describe that. I even entertained Amon Hillman's claim. And I don't, to this day, I stand by entertaining this claim that the Greek, I wanted to hear it because everything you just said, the idea that we have Greek sources that don't match the Hebrew, doesn't look like one's translated from the other. They look different, period. Like, it makes you think there's something back there that we lost. Is it Greek? Is it Hebrew? That's what I wanted to know. I wanted to hear his arguments. Unfortunately, the arguments weren't that good at the end of the day. The arguments for the other side were a lot stronger. Going through, I did my own checking of the arguments on both sides. I didn't just accept Armin was wrong because other scholars said so. I actually looked. I went through the Psalms. Psalm 118 was one of the clearest ones in my example of an alphabetical order being shown in the Hebrew side on and each sentence, where the Greek didn't have that. The Greek was actually translating perfectly from one side to the other. But like the idea that there's an axiom that all these sources are Hebrew and that there's no way Greek came first, I don't think should be an axiom. I think people should challenge it. It's just, I think what you're saying, it ends up being what makes the most sense, is that the Greek that we have right now might predate the Hebrew that we have right now in some cases, not in all the books. In some books, like Esther, maybe, for example. Esther's one of them I'm thinking of right now. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's like we still have to remember that the Bibles we have right now are not the original forms. They're different. They don't match the oldest manuscripts we have. So
well, and okay, Russell Gmirkin, who he has a theory of Septuagint priority, right? He believes the Septuagint came, well, more or less was like composed at the same time as the Hebrew.
Same time, right?
But he believes that if you go all the way back to this period, right, like the 3rd century, like he thinks that when this translation was created, it was created from a predecessor text in Hebrew that was the sort of fountainhead that everything else came from. Right. Now, this is not what mainstream textual critics believe. Mainstream textual critics, but like the mainstream view, like Emmanuel Tove and like textual critics who are in the top of the field right now, they believe that around the 5th and 4th centuries BC, that there were simply separate traditions in Hebrew that existed side by side, and Jews were sort of comfortable. Just like today, we have the King James Bible and we have the critical text, and we have the NIV and we have the KJV, and people are comfortable with the fact that there are slight differences and there are passages missing in one and present in another. That's what it would have been like in early Judaism. There were just different Hebrew versions. And as the Jews became more and more Hellenized, and they, eventually translated all this stuff into Greek, they just kept copying the Greek and didn't continue copying the Hebrew that was all the way back here. This is gone. It's lost. It is in the dustbin of history, and it can only be reconstructed to a certain extent by textual critics all the way over here.
I got to stop and just like marvel at the insanity from some people in the comments. Greek is older than Hebrew. Okay, First of all, we're talking about languages, not alphabets. Greek, it goes back to Mycenaean. Hebrew goes back to Canaanite. So there's an evolution of language right there. So to date one over the other, I assume he's talking about the alphabetic script of Greek, which our oldest would be 8th century BC, right?
I mean, here we got the timeline of Greek. It's a little harder for me to navigate.
The second part, okay, forget about the first part. We can debate if Greek is older than Hebrew, depending on how we define Hebrew.
Depending on how we define Greek too. If you define,
that's what I'm saying.
It's an evolution. If you define Greek as Mycenaean,
exactly,
then it's older.
It's older than Hebrew. Fine. So that the first part is not the cringiest part of this. It's the second part. They published a study showing Phoenician came from a form of Greek. Your brain is falling out of your head, Carl. Phoenician is a Semitic language. Greek is an Indo-European language. Phoenician can't come from Greek.
Yeah.
It can't. Zero possibility that it happened. Comes from
Now-
the Semitic side. Now, if you're talking about alphabets, the oldest alphabet is the Phoenician alphabet. Is that alphabet from the Near East, not the Greek alphabet, right?
And there is
The Greek
some
alphabet
interesting
The
there
Greek
is some
alphabet is the
interesting
same alphabet, though. It's the
yeah,
same
the
alphabet.
new it's the Greek alphabet that replaced Linear B. So the Greeks transitioned from Linear B to the Phoenician, the Phoenicia Grammata. There is some interesting cutting edge scholarship that I've been looking into, though, that may indicate that the Greeks and the Phoenicians may have had a common ancestral script that they both took from, as opposed to just the Phoenicians and then the Greeks taking from it.
The Greeks taught the Indians to write as well. What the hell is going on in the chat right now? What is he doing? Google it, he said. No, you're the one that made the claim. Bring your source. There's no evidence that Hebrew or that Phoenician came from Greek. One of them's Semitic, one of them's Indo-European, dude. You're talking. You're insane right now. You're insane.
Well, and we got the Pelasgians as well. So, so basically the original Greek alphabet is Mycenaean. But there was a transition after the so-called Greek Dark Ages, which how long
God,
the Greek.
Dude. I'm sorry, but it just gets crazier. He thinks there's no writing in India before 250. You know what Sanskrit is? Do you ever heard of Sanskrit, bro? Are you fucking dumb? Oh my God. I gotta stop looking at the chat. Okay.
All right. So
I'm done. I'm done looking at the chat.
So we're talking about
get rid of this.
So we were talking about the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th century recensions of the Greek Septuagint that basically erased a good portion of the tradition, right? If that had never happened, we would have a more or less unadulterated, unbroken chain, in an ideal world, the world I wish we lived in, where we just had the original Greek Septuagint, right? Like that we would have had a reliable chain of transmission that was not corrupted and adjusted and rescinded towards the Masoretic text. And we would have had very different Bibles. We would have had a Greek Bible that was radically different from the Masoretic text. But the early Christians recognized this as a threat that seems like, well, the Jews have the original Bible. They have it in Hebrew. We have it in Greek. Ours is a translation of their Bible, but ours is so different. It must be a bad translation. Let's fix it. That's what happened. And this is happening in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th century. And by the time it hits our manuscript tradition all the way down here, you got Codex Sinaiticus, Codex Vaticanus, and Codex Alexandrinus. You got the three big
church Bibles.
The big Bibles that by that point have been corrupted. They saved
and these
some
are
of the
And these are the major Bibles that make up our Septuagint that we use today. So your Septuagint that you use today, whether it's Brenton's or whatever it is, they're basically taking these 3 big major codexes, Alexandrinus, Sinaiticus, Vaticanus, and they're sort of, what do they put, just decide which variances they go with? How do they decide between those 3?
In some cases, they've been corrected, right? Like those are heavily corrected manuscripts, especially Sinaiticus. So they kind of compare them. So like Brenton is doing the early grunt work based primarily on Vaticanus. You can see like first published in the parallel edition with Brenton's English translation in 1870. Brenton's Greek Septuagint text is primarily based on Codex Vaticanus. So when you read Brenton, you're pretty much reading Codex Vaticanus. But when you read Ralph Hanhart's Septuagint on Cross Bible, you come over here. When you read this, this is Brenton actually, but if you switch this to the 1935 Ralph's edition, you get a slightly updated text. So this is not going to match this Greek text right here from Ralph's. This is not going to match the Septuagint exactly the way that Brenton's does. This is a scholarly edition. This is a text critical edition of the Greek. And if you want the latest and greatest, if you want your Greek text to basically be reconstructed in a way that is as close to the sort of uncorrupt original as we can possibly get with the advantage of scholarship, you really need to get the Robert Hanhart's Septuagint edition. This is the one, the Göttingen Septuagint as well. These are the ones that are it's in the 2006 edition, Ralph Hanhart's. It's being constantly updated by new scholarship, by the German Bible Society. I am working really hard to get this licensed and implemented into Cross Bible so that we have the latest and greatest Greek editions and Hebrew editions. Those are the ones that you really want to use if you want the, all the footnotes, and you want to see like what the textual variants are and how far can we reliably go to get back to this layer here and sort of get rid of this layer here, which is the corruption of the Septuagint, right? It is the degradation of the Septuagint. Now, the big textual variant that I'm going to get into to illustrate this is Deuteronomy 32:43, right? Neil, did you have anything you wanted to say before I get into this?
No.
So the Hebrew Masoretic text, and you just look this up in your Bible, in Deuteronomy 32:43, the Hebrew Masoretic text and most translations of this verse are going to be fairly short. They're going to say, "Be glad, O nations, his people, for he'll avenge the blood of his servants, revenge and repay his foes, and he will cleanse his land, his people." Super short. However, textual critics have figured out that this is an A, B, C, D, E, F poetic structure in Hebrew. It's deficient. It's missing 3 lines at least in the Hebrew Masoretic text. There's something wrong with the Hebrew text. And we always had in the Septuagint tradition these additional lines in there that originally were assumed to be like they fit this poetic structure a little bit better. And it's, so instead of saying "Be glad, O nations, his people," and these are English translations, obviously, it says "Be glad, O skies, with him, and let all the sons of God do obeisance to him. Be glad, O nations, with his people, and let all of the angels of God prevail with him." There are these references to sons of God and angels of God in the Greek that were not in the Hebrew, and this has been the case for centuries, and nobody could really figure out why. Like, there must be something weird going on in the Greek. Well, when they uncovered 4Q Deuteronomy Q, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they have finally found a Hebrew version that corroborates the Greek, that has in Hebrew the references to the sons of God that we always knew from the Greek. But before, it was just like Greek versus Hebrew. Well, I mean, Hebrew is the original, the Greek must be corrupt. Well, no. Now we know that there is a Hebrew tradition that preserves the poetic structure. So we've unearthed this. We can't just ignore this. Now, what's happening in the world of Bible publishing is that the shorter version, this exists in Deuteronomy 32:8 and 32:43. The shorter version is what is still published in the body of the text of your Bible. If you're reading the NKJV, the New King James, the CSB, the NIV, the NASB, the Message Bible, the NET Bible, they're all going to print this short version right here, right? I'll blow it up. Going to print the version that says, "Rejoice, O nations, with his people." You're not going to find sons of God there, right? You won't find it. However, if you get your hands on the NRSV, which is a more, sort of scholarly edition, or the ESV or the NLT, they're printing the long version. And you can see some of them give you footnotes to at least inform you of the fact that there is this evidence that this particular verse is longer. So here's an example.
The King James has the shorter version?
Yeah, the King James is a shorter version.
Usually the King James likes to talk about how they have all these extra verses and how the evil Bibles took all these verses, and so
okay. So we'll get into that. That is the new. That's what is regarding the New Testament. In the Old Testament,
that's a New Testament thing.
So yeah, basically in the 17th century and 18th century and 19th century and beginning of the 20th century, the first half of the 20th century,
just modern world, you'd say.
the Hebrew Masoretic text was king. It was just like that. The Septuagint was only really revered by, Eastern Orthodox and Catholic Christians. Like it was considered corrupt. It was considered a bad translation of the Hebrew. If you want the original, you got to go to the original Hebrew. Well, no, we now know that there are readings that are preserved in the Greek representing some lost Hebrew tradition, which has been partially recovered from the Dead Sea Scrolls. And now we're getting the long version. And let me just show you in Cross Bible. This is the verse that I pulled up, right? So this is Deuteronomy 32. You can see that in the NASB, they are adhering to the Masoretic text. You see no sons of God there, but then in the ESV, look what we got: all gods, right? All gods. So they put that, they went back to the Dead Sea Scrolls, corroborated by
that's the original. And that's what
Yeah,
that's why I put on the thumbnail original Bible. We
Yeah,
can piece
Angeli Theou.
together. We can piece together the original based on the manuscript transmission and then sort of using a little bit of outside data. And what I mean by that is like we know there was a point in time when polytheistic monism, I don't know how what other way to describe it. I kind of made that up. It's not like a real thing. Polytheistic monism, I just made this up. But the way I would define it is you have this one God who's the king of the gods, and then you have lower gods. And that's reflected in the old Hebrew Bible, in the manuscripts of the Hebrew Bible, just like it's reflected in the Greek world, where Zeus is the nous, the father, and then all the gods are below Zeus. Like that's how Yahweh was. And I think the Old Testament, like this verse right here, reflects that. The polytheistic attitude of the world.
Yes, but what we find is that in the Hebrew, this has been redacted. This has been redacted.
And that's
we don't
not
know
the original.
when,
So that so here you can't say the Hebrew is the original. It's not a black and white thing, is what we're getting at.
Yeah.
The answer to the question, which is original, it depends. What verse? What passage? It all depends. You cannot say one is the original, one isn't. Masoretic text is not the original Bible, but neither is the Septuagint.
But look, if we were going to role play here, like if we were going to entertain this for the sake of argument and play devil's advocate, and we're going to say like, okay, which came first, the Greek or the Hebrew? If the Hebrew is a translation of the Greek, it's translating a different Greek.
Right.
In this verse, like the Hebrew, why, like go back to this. Why would the Hebrew translate from the Greek and just like drop this stuff out? I mean, effectively, that's what happened. There was a Hebrew original that had these lines in it, and someone copying the Hebrew went just scrapped it. They just scrapped these lines. But what you have here is you have in the Greek a preservation of an older Hebrew tradition. You have Ephranthite urani, right? The sky, oh heavens, right? In the Hebrew, it's oh nations, right? Goyim. So and then you have Theu, right? We have this. You have the sons of God. You have the Angeli Theu, the angels of God.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Uioi Theu. That's a translation of Beni Elohim. That's a very strange. That's a strange phrase to use because in the Greek they're using angelos or angeloi.
Well, here they have sons of God, and here they have angeli, the messengers of God, the angels of God. Yeah,
that would be more common for the Greek to use the angeloi Theu. Exactly. But the fact that you find Uoi Theu means somebody had a Hebrew manuscript of the sons of God, Beni Elohim, and they literally translated it. Instead of going with Angelo, they went with the sons of God. That's an interesting point right there.
Yeah, but basically the mainstream hypothesis here that like we started with a Hebrew text that got translated into Greek, and that there was a parallel tradition where you had a Hebrew text that just got translated into, didn't get translated, it continued to just be preserved in Hebrew and got translated into English, which is what we have here, right? Like this is a translation of the Hebrew, and this is a translation. The ESV is translating the Greek in this circumstance, or at least they're translating the Hebrew in light of the Greek, in light of the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're taking all of the evidence and they're giving us an updated English translation that has, oh heavens, all gods, and it doesn't have angels of gods because all gods is probably the same. It's sons of God, angels of gods, right? Or I'm sorry, angels of God. So it's sort of perceived, or at least the hypothesis that Emmanuel Tov has is that the whoever was copying the Hebrew Masoretic text early on, the Proto-Masoretic text, saw these references to the divine council and the sons of God was uncomfortable with the henotheistic, monolatristic, polytheistic, whatever it is that they perceived as like a multitude of gods. They redacted it. This is a theological redaction of the text that then makes it so that the Hebrew is just short. It's just like if you just get this Jewish study Bible and open it up, and you'll find that, they're translating the Hebrew Masoretic text, but there's a in the margin, they have a reconstruction of this verse that is fuller because they recognize that this is a poetic structure. It's like It's A, B. Like they need, it needs to fall in line. The Hebrew Masoretic text is deficient here. And this isn't the only place. There are a lot of places in the Bible you can take the Greek and you can find the original wording from the Greek, not the Hebrew. That's
crazy.
pretty profound.
It is profound. It is very profound. Yeah. These are the reasons why I'm entertaining the idea that the Greek came first. Like I don't think it's a crazy thing to say. It's just the evidence that we have is there's not enough to conclude that. We can't go there yet. It looks like most of the Bible came from Hebrew,
Yeah. And also, like, I don't want to knock too much on the Masoretic text. If you look at Emmanuel Tov's scholarship, he does marvel at the fact that in general, the Masoretic text from the earliest tradition all the way through to the Leningrad Codex was miraculously preserved, in his opinion, right? Like it was just at least the structure, the consonantal framework, the consonants, not the vowels. The vowels maybe shifted around in the Masoretic tradition. He sees
they started using Nikud. They didn't start using Nikud till when? Way later, right?
Yeah.
So we don't know. We don't know how a lot of these words might have been pronounced. Another example of that is Molech or Melech or Molech. We don't really know exactly how that was originally pronounced. It might have something to do with the Babylonian ritual king sacrifice. This is what someone was telling me recently. In Babylon, they had a mock king, human sacrifice ritual. It was called a mock king ritual, a substitute king ritual, where someone would pretend to be the king. They dress them up in royal robes and put a crown on their head, and they kill them, sacrifice them to the gods because some sort of omen made him do it or whatever. I don't know exactly the reason. I'm not an expert in that. But the point is, when we find Molech in the Bible, and people pointed out, wait a minute, it almost looks like this is more of a ritual than a god. And then it's like, wait a minute, the same consonants, MLK, are the same consonants for the word king. Maybe it was a Melech ritual. I'm just pointing. That's just one of the things I've heard about this. Point is, when Nikud comes up, when we start using Nikud, which is the vowel system, way later in the game, and we don't know how exactly the consonants could have sounded going back into
probably around here, right? Like it's 7th, 8th, 9th century when the Hebrew Masoretic.
And this is why we don't know how Yahweh's pronounced, because we don't know the vowels. We only know Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. We don't know what the vowels would have sounded like because we didn't have Nikud. So it's a guess. Is it Yehovah? Is it Yahuwah? Is it Yahweh? We don't know. No one knows. It's just a guess.
So maybe we should transition to the New Testament so we don't end up doing a 4-hour marathon. I don't know what. Okay.
Well, I think that pretty much sums up what we're doing. Is that when we look at the Old Testament and we try to figure out what's the original, first of all, you got to remember it depends on what book we're looking at.
Yeah.
Depends on if we're looking at Genesis, we're looking at the Minor Prophets, or we're looking at Psalms, and it all depends. But then you're going to find things with the Greek and the Hebrew, as you pointed out, that don't match up. As in, neither of them look like a translation of either of them. So then that leads to the conclusion that there was some sort of common ancestral source for both of them that is lost. Does that sum up what you're saying?
Pull up the last super chat.
Okay, the last one,
just one that just popped up.
Okay,
that's a good.
We'll finish the super chats before we do New Testament too. Corel, thank you for the $5. Can we say that when they differ, the Septuagint is more often representing the older original text than vice versa?
No. It's really just, well, in this case, you have to go instance by instance, textual variant by textual variant. What do we mean when we say textual variant with respect to the Old Testament with textual critics? Do you know this, Neil? Like what is a textual variant in the Old Testament?
A textual variant?
Yeah, like how would you define a textual variant with respect to the Old Testament? I can just tell you. Let you take a stat.
All right, so a certain word is different in a different manuscript. Textual variant.
Okay, so a textual variant in the Old Testament is any difference from the Hebrew Masoretic text. So if you consider the Hebrew Masoretic text to be the quote unquote standard,
okay, I see what you're saying.
If you're reading the Greek and it's matching, like let's say you're on Cross Bible and you're reading the Greek and you're reading the Hebrew and you're reading the Greek and you're reading the Hebrew, and then you come across Deuteronomy 32:43 and you're like, you hit the brakes, like, wait a minute, this is like substantially different. There's like a whole bunch of words here
Yeah.
in the Greek that are not in the Hebrew, this is by definition a textual variant. You know, like urani here, like the shoot. My browser.
But can't you have a textual variant in a Homer manuscripts?
Oh yeah. So
it doesn't have to
in
be
Homer,
just on. You're saying a textual variant is when you have a standard source and then you just use that as the model that everyone's based off.
yeah. So like in Homer, in the first couple lines of the Iliad, there's a part where it says "Io nisi te pasi" or "Io nisi te deta" or "daita." So those are textual variants. We have manuscripts of
Right.
Homer. Some of them say "daita" and some of them say
Yeah.
"pasi."
So
in that
different
particular
words
verse.
from different manuscripts are textual variants.
Yes. So that's a
Yeah.
textual variant in Homer. But what I mean is, like, we don't, in that case, we don't know. We don't know which is if it's pasi or daita in the
Right.
third line of the Iliad. It could be either one. However, if we had a situation where there was one version that we believed was the definitive, like this is the Bible version of Homer, and then we have all these other versions that have some little differences, we would say that everything is a textual variant if it's not the same as this exemplar.
Sure.
That's what we have with the status of Hebrew Bible textual criticism, is basically this text right here. This is considered the gold standard. This is the standard by which we measure all.
Which doesn't mean it's the original either.
It's just basically, it has become the received text. This is the received text of the Hebrew Bible.
Textus
so
Receptus.
whenever this is the Textus Receptus of the Hebrew Bible.
Yeah.
So whenever we get a manuscript from 4 Deuteronomy Q that has these readings in it, that has skies and it has the son B'nai Elohim as sons of God, because it's different from the Hebrew Masoretic text, we consider the version that is different a variant compared to what is here the standard. It's arbitrary. It's not standard because it is the oldest. It's just standard because it's the received text. It's what we consider to be standard. So it is flowing from this tradition here, the Proto-Masoretic text, which is, like, in some senses could be better and older than the Hebrew than the Hebrew that's behind the Greek. We just don't know where they converge. Like, they converge at some point. Somebody wrote the quote unquote original. Maybe it was in the 5th century. Maybe it was in the 8th century. Who knows? I'm not going to speculate on when it was originally composed. But all we have are like copies of an earlier point in time where they diverged into these two, what we call text types or textual families. And if you want to go to some other, so basically, yes and no. There are instances where we have enough evidence to definitively conclude that, here in this instance, the Greek is actually representing an original that's better than the Hebrew, or at least like it's more complete than the Hebrew in its poetic structure. It works. It's not always the case. It's not an axiom. It's not like a universal thing that, like, whenever there's a textual variant, whenever they're different, the Greek is better. Now, if you're Russell Gmirkin, you're probably going to push the Greek and you're going to say, no, the Greek is better. It is a better representation of the original. However, the problem is you got all of these recensions. You got all, like, these are problematic for reconstructing. Aquila, Symmachus, Origen, Hesychius, and Lucian, they screwed it up. And Kaiga, Theodotion, these ones, they confused everything.
That makes a lot of sense. So basically, Corhill, to answer, not more often. So you asked, is the Septuagint more often represent the old original? You're saying not more often, but it does at various points. It does.
Sometimes there's enough evidence to indicate that it does. And by the way, we have two different versions of Daniel. We have like the OG Daniel, which we have manuscript evidence for, and we have the Theodotion revision of Daniel. OG Daniel, in many, many instances, and go get John Collins' commentary on Daniel if you want to learn more about this. The original Greek version of Daniel, not Theodotion's revision, has a lot of clues of what was originally in the prototype of Daniel that is obscured in the Hebrew Masoretic text. If you really want a good, if you really want a good understanding of the foundation of the Danielic literature, you kind of got to dig into the Greek a little bit. So this statement, this super chat, may be true with respect to Daniel, with OG Daniel, Old Greek Daniel.
Yeah, and that's why I kept saying, I said it like 10 times already on this just in this stream. It depends. To answer the question of what came first, the answer depends on what book we're talking about. Seriously, It's such a flowing, moving text. There wasn't just a time where people sat down and wrote the whole Old Testament in one shot. Like, you have every book was different in different time period, maybe different author, maybe a group of authors, and they get put together at some point.
Can you do a few super chats while I go save my dog, because he's downstairs?
Yes, I will do that. So I will drop you on the bottom for now. All right. Thank you for that super chat, Core Hill. Let's go to Daniel Kyle. Thank you for the $10. During the Hellenistic period, the varieties of Hebrew stories and mythologies were established with a nation epic to compete with Greek critics. Apologetics has always produced the accepted story. Absolutely, Daniel. In fact, I was just reading recently which founding epic was it? I'm trying to think of. There was a founding epic that I was just reading, and it had to do with, I forgot where it was. I think it was some sort of Greek foundation story, where the hero, oh my God, I can't think of the name of it right now. I was just reading about it. But anyways, the point is, the hero was told by the oracle at Delphi to go to this promised land that he was going to give to them. So he's at an oracle. He's up on a mountain. Delphi is a mountain. He's up on a mountain, gets an oracle from God. God tells him, go to this land with your people, with your tribe. It is your land. I'm going to give it to you. Give him these particular laws. He gets laws on a mountain from a god to an oracle to a holy land. And that's a very Hellenistic way to tell. This is so common in the Hellenistic period. I could probably, if I did a video on this, I can probably come up with like a dozen to 20, maybe even pushing up to 20 examples of myths that have a hero who comes from a land I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, kicked out of some land, an oracle of a god kicks him out of a land, goes and gets the laws, goes and sets up a new land, and gives the laws there and sets up a new town. That is such a Hellenistic type for storytelling. And I see Steven's back. Any thoughts on that, Steven?
I think my dog has something to say about it. This is Rambo. This is his debut. He's never been on YouTube anymore, but he's never been on YouTube before. But he's a 16-year-old miniature dachshund, and yeah, there we go. We got the dog stream now. But
what's his name?
Rambo.
Hey, Rambo, it's Medea.
Yeah, say hi.
Medea, look at Rambo. Huh?
Cuteness overload. Yeah, and it's Rambo. I spell it Rimbaud, like the French poet. So,
any thoughts about the super chat? Did you check it out yet?
During the Hellenistic period, the varieties of Hebrew stories and mythologies were established with a nation epic to compete with Greek critic apologetics that has always produced the accepted story. Yeah, I don't know if I can't think of a concrete example I could elucidate, but pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, this has been talked about at length. Brutes, what's his name? Here it is. Here's one. This book right here, Greek Myth in the Bible, by Bruce Loudon, has tons of examples of the hero. This is what I was just reading. The hero getting kicked out of the land with their tribe. So there's some tribe in some land, whether it's Egypt or Crete or Asia Minor or something, and they get kicked out of the land for some reason. They go to an oracle. Usually in this particular case, it's the Oracle of Delphi. It's the big oracle. They go to the Oracle of Delphi up on the mountain of Delphi. You and I both been there, and then told to go to land X, which I would give to you, and you will give them these laws. Here are the laws. Law 1, blah, 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 blah. That is very specific and very unique of a set of type of a story. And that you see it in the Hellenistic period all over the place. So the fact that Moses sort of fits that type I think, is a good indication of when the Genesis story gets written, or Exodus story, I should say. But yeah, thank you for that super chat. And then Daniel also, it's Samuel Spiel says, Old Hebrew was taught to Israelites by Native American colonists. Open your freaking eyes. It's obvious if you're paying attention. I'm hoping. No, I'm gonna assume this is a joke because, but you never know. The internet. There might be someone out there that literally thinks that. But no, I'm Samuel's joking around. Thank you, Samuel, for that super chat. Deirdre, the five, what is that? Euros or something else?
Pounds.
Oh, it's pounds. Okay. Thank you for that. Gnostic, would you like some energy healing on letting go of your inner trauma relating to Amun? Perhaps it's blocking your next big discovery.
Your inner trauma.
Well, if that's the case, then yeah, I'm all open for that. And thank you for that super chat. I appreciate that. Myth Vision Podcast. Thank you, Derek. Obviously, everyone here knows about Myth Vision Podcast, but if you don't, if you're one straggler who's like, who's Myth Vision Podcast? Feel free to check it out. I love this section, polytheistic roots. It was because we were talking about the sons of God area, which in Job, if I'm not mistaken, the manuscripts of Job that we have are different than what we have in our Bibles. The Bibles say, I give these lands to the allotment of the sons of Israel. And then I think in the manuscripts of the Dead Sea Scrolls, it says sons of God. So it says 70 sons of God, which is very interesting if you actually know about ancient Near Eastern mythology. 70 there were 70 gods that were under El or Dagon, the sons of Dagon. 70. That's the Assyrian god Dagon. So that the fact that matches up, you have Yahweh with 70 sons of God and Dagon with 70 sons of God. And then during the Assyrian festivals, which was Zakru and Kisu, which are the spring equinox and the fall equinox, both of those festivals coincide with the Passover and the Sukkot festivals. And in the case of the Passover and in the Zakru festival, they both sacrifice the same amount of 70 bulls throughout the week. So I think the 70 sons of God thing lines up with what we find in Assyrian mythology. That's what I think. But they pulled that. Someone at some point decided to edit that out of the Bible. Do you know about that variant?
No.
Yeah, it's in Job. But thank you for that super chat. And then we got two more, and then we'll go back to the New Testament. Oh, no, we got a couple more, actually. But yeah, we'll get through this. GD, is it possible that Hebrew is intentionally ambiguous and Greek is intentionally precise? Did the confusion begin when Greeks began applying precise definitions to intentionally ambiguous Hebrew?
No, I don't think Greek is all that precise. In a lot of cases, it's ambiguous, and it's there are instances where just translating between languages sometimes, like the Greeks call the hand and the finger, the hand and the arm and the foot and the leg the same thing, right? They have like pous for like foot, and they refer to their foot as like their leg, and the same thing like hir is like the hand or the arm. So in that case, Greek is not precise, but the Greeks and Russian does the same thing. So like I'm a Russian specialist. I have a degree in Russian. Russian's very similar to Greek in that sense. It's just like, for some reason, we as English speakers prefer precision in anatomy. We like this is not our arm and this is not our hand. But in Greek and Russian, they're just the same thing. Like they don't care. So maybe that's not the best example of what you're thinking of specifically, but I would definitely push back with lots of examples. That's just off the top of my head. There are lots and lots of examples where Greek is definitely not precise at all. Compared to English.
Yeah.
And there are examples where English is ambiguous, and like Greek will have two different words that have precision, where then they reduce down to one word in English. And it's just like, it's not because English isn't, we're not like English is not superior because we say hand and arm. Like it's not. It's just, this is just what we do. It's like, it's just language. Get over it,
Yeah. And by the way, I remembered what story that was. It's the story of Lycurgus. Lycurgus gets exiled, goes to the oracle of Apollo, and then he gets the Spartan constitution. So the Spartans believe that the constitution was delivered from Apollo on Mount Delphi. Cool story.
Yeah, we got Russian speakers in the chat. So yeah, ruka is the word for arm, and hand, and then ruchka can mean little hand, and it can also mean pen. So
Nice. Solera Knight, thank you for the $10. Scrolls Bible 66 book library included many genres, fantasy. And by the way, 66 is only including the Protestant Bibles. When we're talking about Catholic and Orthodox, they expand, they use more of the apocryphal stuff. But anyways, to the point, included many genres, fantasy, mystery, thriller, science, myths, but no to little actual history. That's so Kings and Chronicles is portraying itself as history, but it's not. I wouldn't even try to put it in the same category as like Herodotus, who gives you wild legends. I think it's more propagandistic in the sense where it's trying to tell a story that's leading up to something. All these kings are bad. All these kings were good. When the good kings came, good things happened. When the bad kings came, put up Asherah poles and divination was rampant, bad things happened. That's what I see in their so-called history, which is Kings and Chronicles. So I actually would say no. And is there any real history going on in the Bible? I would say no. What do you think about that?
Sorry, I was distracted by something in the chat. Well, to your point about the 66 books, I mean, yeah, we got we now have the ESV Catholic edition and Cross Bible, which has the Apocrypha. We're expanding with more Bibles that have the Apocrypha. And like, I mean, the Bible has different genres in it.
Right.
But there are historical books in the Bible that are at least trying to render some kind of a history. Whether or not it's, to the extent to which it's historically accurate is debatable.
Right. But I was saying, like, Herodotus is a history book. Thucydides is a history book. Xenophon's a history book. It's not mythology, even if some of the stuff in there is legends. Even if you're getting, Herodotus tells wild stories about crazy things happening, gold guarding griffins, mythological creatures. He thinks they're real. But I wouldn't say Kings and Chronicles falls into that category just because it's not accurate. Kings and Chronicles is trying to tell a story that's leading up to something theological. It's completely at its core theological, propagandistic. It's trying to tell you worship Yahweh or else. It's literally, that's the point. The point is these kings did all these horrible things and these kings did all these great things. And when the bad kings came, bad things happened. That is not what Herodotus is doing. Herodotus is not trying to, there's no propaganda behind Herodotus that's trying to get you to do something. So that's why I would never say Kings and Chronicles are the history section, which probably some apologists would say. I think they're wrong. So thank you for that super chat. Thunderstorm, thank you for the super chat. Feels like they rewrote scripts to sell Christianity to the Gentiles. Same as watching Schindler's List or Indiana Jones or Jojo Rabbit. What do you think about that?
I'm still just distracted. Sorry.
What's going on in the chat? I'm not even looking at it.
Okay, so because I brought up the Russian thing, you have probably more than one subscriber or active participant in the channel who is a proponent of Anatoly Fomenko's new chronology. I know it's something like a year ago when I first watched the Amon Hillman interview on Danny Jones, and I, started getting blasted by all my friends to ask me to evaluate it, and and it turned into this big research project that I dug into it, and I found out, this guy
hurts my head.
Yeah, so I did the same thing, like a 1-year research project on Anatoly Fomenko, because Derek got me into this. He introduced me to someone named Sean Sorensen, who Steven Sorensen. His website got taken down for some reason. I mean, maybe he took it down, but there is a whole community of Fomenkoids, is what they call them in Russia, of people who have now adopted Fomenko's new chronology here in the United States and in other places outside of Russia.
Tell them what it is. If they don't know what it is, tell them what it is.
So this is they are like the Ammonites in Russia.
Yes.
For this
they are
theory.
Just like Ammonites. Yeah. All the historians are wrong except for this one guy.
Yeah, this one guy is right.
Everyone's wrong. And whatever you throw at them is somehow corrupted.
It can not be true. Everything they refute
every source
everything.
They don't care what you do. But and they think that, what do they say? History was all made after 1800 or something?
That basically the Romanov dynasty executed a revisionist history campaign where they had access through Byzantine records, like to all of they basically rewrote history. And they took actual historical events that took place in the very recent past, like a few hundred years, and wrote ancient history about it. So basically, when you read stories about classical Greece, it's actually like coded history from the late medieval period.
Right.
That basically all history is fake.
This is another thing where I'm going to be rude to people and say, I'm sorry. If you believe that, you have a low IQ. Because if you can't think, okay, there's ancient manuscripts. Some of them are in this museum all the way over here. Some of them are in this museum all the way over here. Some of them are in Egypt. Some of them are all these Greek manuscripts, Hebrew manuscripts, Babylonian, and all the way in India. They have a whole other section of manuscripts. And they're all okay.
It's all fake.
All of it was coordinated and faked on purpose to make us all think. It's so insane.
But there are thousands of people. There are thousands of people around the world. There's a museum to it in Russia. I don't know. Maybe they closed it, but there was a museum in Russia. And the thing is that like this was debunked very, very thoroughly by the sort of father of linguistics in Russia, who took down all of the linguistic arguments.
I can debunk it right now. They just dug in Herculaneum. They just dug up a brand new findings. Everyone saw it with their own eyes. Earth that was not disrupted was dug up, and they found papyrus scrolls. And what did they find when they found? They found one of them that mentions Plato. So if Plato's all made up from the medieval period, how the hell did a Plato manuscript find its way into the ground in a city that was destroyed in 79 AD? Was Mount Vesuvius erupted. Herculaneum was destroyed. Herculaneum is a perfect time capsule. Nothing happened in Herculaneum after 79 AD. If flamenco was correct, Herculaneum, we would find completely foreign manuscripts to completely people we've never heard before. There would be no Plato. There'd be no Caesar. There's no gods that we know. All of it would be nonsense. The fact that we found Plato there means our history is true. We're not being lied to. Flamenco over. I just thought of it on the spot. That's how easy that is.
And look, it's been a while since I dug into it. It was enough for me to the issue that I had with Sorensen is that a lot of the sources that I could point to that were really, really good takedowns of it were all in Russian, and I couldn't they weren't available in English translation. And so I cited them. I don't know. It was my first introduction to a cult, like a sort of like this. It's weird,
fascinating to see people who get into these. They find someone who says a bunch of stuff and it goes against what they were taught, and they go, "Whoa, what if that is true?" And then their brain makes them think that it has to be true, and then they just link onto it. And then there's nothing you can do to that person. They're done. They're gone. Yeah. They're fundamentalists.
It's happening in the chat right now.
It's playing out. Either it's fundamentalist flamenco, either it's fundamentalist Ammonites, or it's fundamentalist Christianity. But it's fundamentalism. That's what it is.
I imagine the Ammonites think that they're
Twitter. I can't go on Twitter. When Julian Dory was sharing out my podcast, there were people so upset with me for criticizing Ammon. They were going, "You didn't even know about the purple. You don't know about the burning purple." I go, "Where's the source? I've been asking you guys for years. Where's the purple source?" They show me a source that doesn't say anything about purple, nothing about burning. And I go, "What am I looking at here?" And it's like, it's so weird. It's so weird that they think they're like being convincing, and they're not. I don't know. It's kind of fascinating though.
It's very fascinating. And I can't look, I don't want to get into flamenco, right? The person saying, I'm not saying Anatoly Flamenco's right. It's just, this isn't my first rodeo of dealing with sort of like this decentralized cult. I don't know. I say cult, but maybe cult isn't the right term because it's not this centralized. It's not like Anatoly Flamenco is like congregating with all of his followers. His followers will outsurvive him, right? Like he's going to die and people are going to continue propagating flamenco's new chronology for like ever. I don't know. There's always going to be room.
People want there to be a special hidden thing that they know about and that everyone else is wrong about. It makes them feel smarter. Like I'm guilty of this in my earlier years when I left prison, became a Christian, and got into the whole Gnostic thing. And I had this mentality about me back then that I knew things that other people didn't know, and it made me feel smarter and better. This was like a weird thing that, like, because back then I was kind of in a shitty life in shambles area in a spot in my life where the only thing I can really cling to was like, I know things that everyone else doesn't know. And so
like
it gives you power. There's
Yeah.
dopamine there. It makes you feel powerful. It makes you feel special. And that's what it is. That's what it comes down to. So anyways, we're not going to talk about flamenco here, but it's a fun little it's a side note because we're dealing with it right now anyways. But anyways.
Yeah. Well, and I did a deep dive in, like, I read all of the original flamenco, like in Russian, flamenco stuff, and watched all of his interviews. Like I went down that rabbit hole and came out the other end, and I'm not interested in redelve, but it is, I appreciate,
Constellation Pegasus. Thank you for the $20. One last thought. Have you looked at Bible on Jehovah's Witnesses site, I assume?
Yeah,
they actually do a good job despite their theology insanity. You see how they have set it up. I haven't seen it. Have you?
Yes, they have the most popular Bible website on the planet.
What is it called?
Like jw.org. And yeah, they have a good a Bible website. It's not the thing about, like, Cross Bible is designed more for the cross comparison of different Bibles. Like, you can compare up to 4 Bibles. I guess I'll take this opportunity to plug it. Go register for Cross Bible, use the timeline of the Bible. So, like, we're currently illustrating things using that timeline. It's available for free. You don't even need to register to access it. I'm probably going to put that behind the registration wall. I think I'm going to make it so you have to at least register. But please, like, I would love to see out of this live stream of like a few hundred people watching, if, a handful of people go and register for Cross Bible, it would be great. I'll drop the trailer again for my, crossbible.com. I'll drop the trailer again for the Easter interview. If you can spare $5 to support us on Patreon, you can go and watch that interview before it's made public on our Patreons, the Cross Bible Patreon. I would really appreciate any support.
All right. Thank you for that. Vesper, thank you for the $4.99. Why is it difficult for some to accept that the Septuagint was translated from Hebrew and Aramaic, which, having fallen out of use, got lost?
It's true.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? So why is it difficult?
Who doesn't accept that?
So a lot of people. What do you mean? We run into people every day.
Yeah.
Like
Septuagint.
why do you think it's difficult? Is what they're asking. It's a good question.
But okay. So yeah. There are people that dismiss the idea. So, like, the let me show the timeline again. There are people who don't believe this.
Yeah, of course. That's what we're talking
about. But can I show that?
I'm trying to. It's for some reason not letting me add it. I don't know why. What's going on here? There it goes.
Okay. Yeah. So this timeline is presenting the sort of, I consider mainstream scholarship of the textual criticism of the Hebrew Bible, that there was a proto-Septuagint Hebrew source that was distinct from the Proto-Masoretic text, that there was not, at this period of time in BC, there was not one standard authoritative canonical, like, Hebrew Bible that everybody relied on. There were a variety of Hebrew families, and then they converged later in the Masoretic text. There are people that deny that, and they deny it because what they believe is that basically the Septuagint was translated not from this. They don't believe this existed. They believe it was sort of like a very liberal, paraphrastic, like.
But he's not talking about a scholarly. I think he's talking about people that are online who just don't accept.
Yeah, because for them, the Hebrew Masoretic text is the word of God, unadulterated, like, word perfect, every jot and tittle. So when they get presented with a Greek text that conflicts with it, that's just like, it's the same thing as King James onlyism, only it's much, much more firmly established in the Jewish community.
Right, but no, that's not what Vesper's asking. Vesper's asking, why is it so difficult for some people to accept that the Septuagint was translated from Hebrew and Aramaic,
which have fallen out of use and got lost?
Yeah.
So
And I don't think they're asking like why, like Gomurk. I don't think they're asking about like Gomurkin's theories or what Gomurkin's doing. Gomurkin's actually coming up with like very reasonable arguments based on the data. I think Vesper's asking like people like the Ammonites people.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess I'm interpreting the question differently. But let's
Yeah.
just put it this way. If you got Tovia Singer on your channel, which you have in the past, and you showed him this timeline and you told him this theory, and you
Well,
said,
first
like, this
of
is
all,
what Emmanuel
the 400 starting out at 400 BC, which I'm so happy you do that. The protos should not go back farther than we know.
Yeah,
That's
we
not
can't push them back
scientific.
further.
That's not scientific. You don't just throw it back to 700 because well, if you feel like it, or because the text says so. Because in that case, we got to put Moses. We got to go back to Moses' time. Then Moses wrote it, right? It's the same thing. Anyways, the point I'm trying to say is, I'm glad you did that. But someone like Tovia would be like, well, why are we starting in 400 BC? Genesis was written in 1500 or whatever, 1300 BC or something. So he's already starting at a point way beyond what we're even talking about. His head is in the clouds compared to where we're at on Earth.
Yeah.
So, but
Well,
I
got a question to Tovia Singer. I made Derek ask him once on a stream, like, what do you think of, like, I asked him about Deuteronomy 32:43, and I cited Emmanuel Tov, like the scholar, and his response was like, it was the idea of like, okay, there is a lost Hebrew behind the Greek, because he thinks the Greek is totally fabricated. He thinks it's all late. He thinks Origen basically forged the Septuagint. And anytime there's a textual variant and there's a difference in the Greek between the Hebrew, he thinks the Hebrew is original and the Greek is corrupt, and it's just like case closed because he's a religious, he's a very religious Jew. And his response was Emmanuel Tov, the scholar, the Dead Sea Scrolls expert, textual critic of the Hebrew Bible, that he is a giant in scholarship, but he's not religious and he's not connected with the rabbinical tradition, and therefore he can't be right. That was his explanation.
I know, I remember that. And it's just so circular. It's presup. It's what it is. He can't be right because he doesn't have my God as an axiom. And that way of thinking, you would think it would be so clear that that's fallacious, but it's not. People actually think this way. There are people who say they can't listen to me because I'm not a Christian. My views in the Bible are meaningless because I'm not a Christian. That is such a circular, question-begging, nonsensical thing to do. You can't listen to someone because they don't have your conclusion. So wait, I have to have your conclusion to even speak on this subject? It makes no sense. Then why even bother studying it? If we just have to accept it. So yeah, I get the frustration. But yeah, Vesper, just to answer what you're saying, I think, to go back to what I was saying before I picked up your super chat, which people feel a certain sense of power from the idea that they're in this small group of a population, a group of a few hundred people who believe in X when the rest of the world believes in Y. There's something powerful about that. There's like a sense of, I'm smarter than everyone else. They haven't figured out the truth, but I have. That's why I think it is. That's why I think and another part of it is, I think people are just so anti-Judaism and Christianity for a good reason, right? People are just pissed off at Judeo-Christian religions being and having a foothold over everything. So they're looking for something to destroy it. And it's actually the idea that, wouldn't that be hilarious if this holy Hebrew Bible was actually written in Greek first? That'd be fucking hilarious. That's another way of looking at it. I think that's what a lot of people get stuck in, that type of thinking, where they're just trying to defeat. They're not thinking like logically or like, my reasons for criticizing the Bible is not because I just don't like it. It's because I've come to these conclusions through studying. I was a Christian. I had every reason to defend the Bible. I believed in it. I loved it. It was everything. It was my whole life, going to church twice a week. I studied my way out of it. Not because I came to the conclusion and then wanted to find that conclusion. Not because I said I want this to be true, because I studied to where I'm at right now. So just, I think that's has a lot to do with it.
And if you go to Cross Bible, this tab right here, study resources, this is a very carefully curated Amazon reading list that, you know, I'm an affiliate, so I get a few cents if anybody buys any books here. But the textual criticism section of this has a lot of very helpful resources that I highly recommend, which include Emmanuel Tove's Textual Criticism of the Hebrew Bible. If you want to find a really legitimate, well-researched reasoning why the Septuagint is so valuable, and in some cases a better representation of the
Ian
original.
Young in there? You should put Ian Young in there.
I don't have Ian Young's. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I do.
You
But
should get him in there at some point.
I need to update this with some new things. But Textual Criticism of the Hebrew Bible, highly recommend that for real scholarly research. The text critical use of the Septuagint in biblical research, I think that's also on there. There's a couple, the Septuagint, what it is, why it matters, Invitation to the Septuagint. And another sort of popular book, When God Spoke Greek, Timothy Michael Law. This is a lot of sort of conservative, Christians and Jews really hate this book because this is also like a very Greek primacy kind of angle. And then the text critical use of the Septuagint, also by Emmanuel Tove. Some of this will go over your head if you don't know Hebrew or Greek, but if you kind of if you scan past the Hebrew and Greek, it's like if you're not digging into this stuff and you're just like running with the Greek first theory, you really gotta kind of up your game.
Yeah. All right. Let me get these. I think we have two more. Lev Polyakov, thank you for the super chat. Love Neil. Great to learn about Stephen's work. How's Monday for the BTR for former patrol who got rejected from religion but keeps Christ? He's got black pill from the U.S. I don't think I'll be available this Monday, but thanks for the super chat, I guess.
Спасибо большое.
Yeah, this Monday I'm pretty sure I got. I don't know. I'll look later, but as of right now, I don't think so. Thank you for that. Are all religions cults? All religions are cults? Well, technically, by the definition, cultus in Latin means it's the same word. It's the word that they use to describe what we would call religion.
I think all religions start out as cults.
Sure,
right?
But how are we defining cult?
Well, you refer to
cult as in you have one leader where you have to take you have to get is it like the cult that you get in the movies where it's evil cults and everyone's all brainwashed? No, I don't think that's what they're defining it as. But I think if you define it from the original Latin sources, the cult of Eleusinian mysteries, the cult of Samothrace, then that's a religion. Yeah.
Yeah, well, in the early Christian movement is referred to as the cult, a cult. It's just the cult. And a religion is like a much more mature, successful, developed, organized version of a cult.
Yes.
And Fomenko's New Chronology is not a religion; it's a cult. And I don't know what I'm not going to pretend to know what the technical definition is. Are the Ammonites a cult? No, but there's definitely some features there.
They have some cult-like tendencies on the internet, but I don't think they actually are an organized, really a cult. No.
But then if a cult is sort of an unorganized religion, maybe I don't know. I think it just depends on how you define things.
Yeah. I think there are some inscriptions that do use the word cultus in Latin for Christianity. I was looking to see if I could find one. I can't right now, but I'm pretty sure there's something out there. That word is definitely used to describe Christianity or to describe any type of religious gathering or whatever. So anyways, thank you for that. Tracy Femstar, thank you for the super chat. And we'll get into the New Testament after this one. What do you think Ammon is right about when it comes to the scholars?
I think he's right that. Sorry, can I answer, or do you want to?
Yeah. You go first.
I think he is dead on right that that especially Bible scholars are they have a relatively poor command of Greek in general, over reliance on lexicons, over adherence to the antiquated grammar translate method. They decode the biblical languages as if it were spells in Harry Potter. This applies to classicists too, by the way.
Yeah.
And so, when he criticizes biblical scholars, when he goes after Wes Huff for not really knowing Greek very well,
he's right.
I would totally get behind him on that. And I said that when I made my 5-hour critique, a lot of people that just didn't watch that, they watched maybe 5 minutes of it and immediately started hating me in the comments. They were like, he doesn't agree with him on anything. watch it, please. Like go, I think it's like at the 20-minute mark where I give him credit and I praise him and I say like, yes, I 100% agree with him on this. Other, biblical scholars in particular and classicists too, they need to step up their game. In Greek, there's a book I'm looking at on my shelf right now, The Greek Pedagogy in Crisis. I put that up on the screen in my video. Yes, people need to do better. And I am advocating for a better proficiency in Greek across the board. I think Christian apologists need to step up their game and learn Greek. I think we should end up in a world where
bad.
Christians,
It's bad that me as an amateur are passing most of these PhDs when it comes to Greek and Hebrew. That's bad. I shouldn't be able to do that. And just because you got your PhD doesn't mean you're done either. Why aren't you still building off I think that's what a scholar is supposed to do. They're supposed to continue to learn as their life goes on. They're supposed to be a scholar, right?
Well, I got my degree in Russian and it was like learning. It was a degree in the language and the literature. So I read 19th century and 20th century Russian literature. I read Pushkin and Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, and I read it all in the original Russian because it was a requirement, because it's just in that field. It's considered like, well, you can't really be a Russian literature specialist. You can't specialize in Dostoevsky if you can't read Dostoevsky in the original. It's just a requirement. And for some reason, in the sort of Christian world and in the scholarly world, increasingly, it's like, well, there's so many translations. Why do we even need to learn Greek? Like, you don't need it. That is what's emerging. And the fact that Hillman is pushing back against that and encouraging people to learn the original. I don't agree with his, I think he's lying about what the original actually says and twisting it, but I totally back yes, everybody should learn Greek, and we should, and I'm dreaming of a future where knowledge of Greek becomes as common and necessary as knowledge of Arabic in Islam. Like, why do they believe that the Quran needs to be learned in Arabic and they prioritize learning Arabic, and the Christians just sort of settle for their translation? That's wrong. Like that should end.
Yeah. And by the way, that's your dream is not going to happen. You want to know why?
I know.
Because ChatGPT is going to replace the requirement level of people. Like eventually a lot of these scholars that are losing funds anyway right now, the humanities are dying. They're losing funds. Archaeology is losing funds. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And what's going to happen is eventually requirements for I was reading requirements for Yale from like 1920. And it was like, you need to know how to learn how to read fucking Homer and read the New Testament. Like you had to be able to read John and translate it on the spot. And that was like a requirement back then. Now no one can do that. And by the way, now you can go to ChatGPT 4 and plug in the John 1, and it tells you the entire translation. It'll break down every single noun and tell you what case it's in, tell you what subjugation, what verb, everything broken down for you, which means people are going to go, well, what do we need to know all this stuff for if we can just ask ChatGPT? Yeah, so they're going to have a very bare minimum amount of Greek people are going to learn.
I'm hoping I can start a little mini cult of people who are obsessed with Greek like I am, who will sign up for Cross Bible, that will get access to this Greek resource that I'm developing. I'm going to have like a whole glossary here. I have a pronunciation guide. If you sign up you can get access to this with verb charts, conjugations, declensions. All of this stuff is going to be available for modern Greek and ancient Greek. So I'm working on this right now. This isn't polished, but I'm debuting it here. Learn Greek the easy way. This is a Greek module that I'm investing a lot of time and energy in for people to learn Greek. So Cross Bible is going to be the hub of people who are going to share in this ideology of like Greek first, learn Greek. Like, I totally agree with Amin on that.
Yeah, I actually just to add to that, I think Amin is absolutely spot on in his assessment that people are not reading far and wide. They're not reading broad. Mm-hmm. People are there, and they're not seeing the big picture that way. Where again, it was traditionally scholars would learn they would get their expertise in whatever their dissertation is, but they were also making sure that they knew all these sources. They knew all the primary sources and they had all this stuff memorized. They knew they could. How many Bible scholars from divinity school can list the first 12 Caesars off by heart without looking it up and just go, Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, Nero, Galba, Otho, Vitellius, Vespasian, Titus, Domitian, Nerva. I just did it. How many, seriously though, how many divinity school students can do what I just did right there? I'm not saying they can't, but I don't think it's that. I don't think that's like a thing people all know. Or how many can name the Ptolemy? How many are familiar with the Ptolemaic dynasty and the difference between the first Ptolemy, second Ptolemy, Philadelphus, and how do they know that? Or like the Seleucid emperors from Seleucus and Antiochus the First, and how many know history? Was what I'm getting at.
I just think that people are checking boxes for their requirements for their PhD or their MDiv.
They know who Antiochus the Fourth is. Why? Because he's the guy in Maccabees. They know the specific things that they have to run into. But Alman makes a good point that if you're not reading broad, you're not going to get the whole big picture. You might miss something. And one of the examples of this is I see a lot of these Bible scholars go, "Oh my God, look at Noah's Ark. It's the same story as in the Epic of Gilgamesh." And it's like, yes, that's true. But do you know how many other flood myths that there are that have elements with Noah's Ark? Like, for example, Gilgamesh or Artahasis, or the other flood survivor, what's his name? From Gilgamesh, whatever. They didn't have 3 sons that populated the earth. But you find that in Deucalion's myth. Deucalion has 3 sons and 3 daughters, 8 total people that survived the flood. So it's like Deucalion and Pyrrha have 3 sons and 3 daughters. That's 8 people that survive and they populate the earth. So what I'm saying is they see the one side, but they don't see that there's more nuance here. I don't know.
Well, and I think also like when you complete your requirements, like I had requirements in college for reading certain books, so I had to read Crime and Punishment and do a whole dissertation on it. Basically, like I got really, really drilled on Crime and Punishment. We didn't cover the Brothers Karamazov in my Russian program. I did that independently. I never read, I'm going to make a confession right now. I haven't read War and Peace, right? I read like a lot of Tolstoy. I read the Tolstoy that was required for my degree. I didn't go on to read War and Peace after college.
It's a heavy book, though. That's a heavy book.
Yeah, it's in Russian and like a lot of it's in French. But like it is a lifelong journey to learn a language and immerse yourself in the literature. And if you've just sort of completed an academic program and you've checked off the boxes and you've translated Luke, but then you don't know who Lucian is and you've never read Plutarch and then like you never read Herodotus.
You look like silly to me.
Yeah, you need to keep going.
No, look, if you're just a Bible scholar in your own lane and you're writing books and you love the Bible and you went to divinity school, you got your PhD and you're writing books about the Bible and that's cool. But if you're going to plant yourself as this all expert of all things that's going to go on the internet and correct everybody and be this arbiter of truth and calling balls and strikes, you better fucking know your shit. Seriously. You better know your shit or you look silly. So I don't like people are like, you call these people out and like, you expect everyone to know everything. It's like, no, I don't. But I expect people who are doing it as their job, as correcting other people all the time and pretending to be this know-it-all, then I'm going to call you out for little shit. So anyways, I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Do I think Amon's wrong about a lot of shit? Yes. Do I think he's full of shit a lot? Yes. Do I think he's right sometimes? Yes.
Well, and you know what I've changed my position on this. A lot of people are like messaging me on Twitter, like, are you going to, apologize? Like, yeah, I apologize. Like I originally, when I encountered all of these blatant errors, right? That's all they are. There's factually incorrect things in this ideology. Like I jumped to the conclusion, okay, this guy must not know what he's talking about. He has a degree somehow, but he's dumb. It didn't make it was really, really difficult for me to like wade through the BS to eventually come out the other end and just be like, oh no, he does know better. He's just lying. I don't think he's actually like dumb. He's not incompetent. He knows Greek well enough to know the truth, but he's concealing it because it plays into his whole shtick. It's his whole persona. Like, so it's not, so when people are like, how can you claim to know more than him when he has the degree? And no, I'm not claiming to know more than him. He knows exactly what I know. That's why he won't debate me. He will not debate me because he knows that I know that what he knows, and it's gonna expose him if he debates me. So he's not gonna do it. He won't
Yeah.
debate you either. People are
No.
asking. People have been asking in the chat, or bring him on for a debate. He's
I always
smarter
say
than
I'm
that.
down. He doesn't want to do it.
Yeah,
He
he's
doesn't.
smart.
He wants to just face off with people who don't know what they're talking about. He's going to just keep
Bob
denying.
Larson.
Yeah,
He will
wants
debate Bob Larson, but
No,
not
no.
Steven Nelson.
Yeah.
And his followers aren't pressuring him to debate me. Like,
Yeah, it's silly. Anyways, yeah, he's I think it's pretty clear what's going on there. GD, thank you for the super chat. Psychedelics, the new driving force of history. Hell yeah. The driving force of history. I agree 100%. Thank you for that super chat. All right, so we got some time left to do some New Testament stuff now.
I don't. Did we kind of go over? Do you want to do another one sometime that's focused more on the New Testament? My dog's gonna
unless you want to just do a quick little, just a few interesting. It's up to you. I don't.
You know, when we originally, just so everybody knows the background here, we recorded a whole thing on the New Testament that got deleted, and so we were going to do it all in a live stream. But I think it deserves. I think when we originally recorded it, it was like 2 or 3 hours. I think we deserve. No, I'm down. If you want to do a live stream sometime, anytime, I'm down to do the New Testament. But I've tried to do this before. I did an interview it's on my channel on What Your Pastor Didn't Tell You, and we never got past the Old Testament because there's just the Old Testament is
so much. Let me just ask you though, because I remember when we were talking in that recording we did, you were bringing up how there were scholars. There was a group of scholars that were using AI for something. You haven't brought that up yet here. We talked about it a lot in our recording. There's something going on with the Bible, and you said they were using AI to discover something, and it was something.
Let me do a teaser. Right. It's not AI necessarily, but obviously, if you show my screen, and if you look at the Center for New Testament Greek manuscript that I have pulled up here, this is just I'll give a little teaser. My dog wants to go outside. Can you pull this up and I'll preview it?
You can let your dog out?
Yeah, I got to take him out for a big
you don't have a fence back there? Okay.
It just normally I have people in the house to take care of him, and
okay.
I'm
here by myself.
So basically, the Center for New Testament Restoration has really I can't get Cross Bible to have this level of detail. So there are you do have to use other resources, but the New Testament manuscript tradition has so many textual variants, why do
you have Coptic on there?
Well, this isn't what I have. This is the Center of New Testament Restoration. So they have all of this is Greek, but these are the majuscules here.
Oh, it looks like Coptic.
Yeah, it's Greek. So the majuscules are written in all capital letters, so they represent that in the top here. So these are the old majuscules, and then the minuscules or the minuscules have lowercase letters. So here you can compare witness by witness to see that a verse like Mark 14:51 has different wording in all of these different manuscripts, and textual critics need to piece it all together to create the critical edition of the New Testament that gets used for Bible translations, because a lot of these manuscript traditions kind of go off the rails, where you have the young men, the neaniskoi, arrested the young man, the neaniskos, right, in Mark 14:51. So these textual variants can come to light if you can compare them like this. And in the timeline of the Bible, so go back to the Bible timeline, one of the things you'll notice, and we'll explain this if we do another episode where we really get into the weeds, but basically the disclaimer that I have when, we went over the Old Testament text types, the Hebrew Masoretic, the Greek Septuagint, the Samaritan Pentateuch. When you get into the text types of the New Testament, traditional textual criticism was founded on this. So you had the Byzantine text, that were also called the majority text, that was copied over and over again in Byzantium and became the standard, became the received text.
Right.
You have the Caesarean, which is now kind of was a group of manuscripts that formed a family. You had the Alexandrian, which comes from the Alexandrian scribal tradition in Egypt, and those are considered to be the oldest and the best families of manuscripts. And then the Western text, which follows also in the Latin tradition. So we have some Greek manuscripts and a lot of Latin manuscripts in this Western text tradition. The disclaimer here, the note is that, the note here is that New Testament textual critics who adhere to the coherence-based genealogical method, abbreviated CBGM, have largely abandoned the traditional categorization of manuscripts into text types as presented in this timeline, preferring instead to group textual variants into clusters. And so basically that caveat means that what you see in this timeline, which you're welcome to explore on your own, and then hopefully you and I can do a real deep dive into this, the history of textual criticism of the New Testament. What we have is basically a changing of the guard in scholarship right now. If you go into the 20th century and you kind of observe this translation, this transition from manuscripts that are colored red to manuscripts that are colored blue for Bibles that are colored red to Bibles that are blue to Bibles that are black. This is the transition that happened from like the 17th, 18th, 19th century, where everything was red, everything was following the Byzantine tradition. Then scholars began to discover more and more manuscripts that were in that were classified as the quote unquote Alexandrian text type. They started making Bibles based on it and overthrew the Textus Receptus and completely like updated the New Testament to a new kind of text. Really? And then after that, the editions became eclectic, where basically there was a new method of textual criticism that was deployed in the Nestle-Aland editions 21 to 28 that used a text critical approach called methodology called reasoned eclecticism, where they realized that, well, we don't need to just rely on Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Vaticanus, like the two big codexes. For a while, it was like those were the definitive Bibles. Like they had to, if they didn't agree, we didn't print it. They started borrowing from the papyri and from all these fragments and even now they're starting to lean back into some of the Byzantine tradition. So what you see here is the shift in scholarship. There's a ground shift. There's like an earthquake right now, where the coherence-based genealogical method, which is a computer, it's like they're building a computer analysis tool that we'll discuss in the next episode. That's kind of like, it's not AI, but there are algorithms that basically allow them to throw this entire system into the trash. They have completely abandoned the whole idea of categorizing manuscripts as Western, Alexandrian, Caesarean is gone.
Really?
They adhere. So the Byzantine text is still a thing, right? Because it's the majority. The Byzantine text is a family. But all of the other text types, at least with respect to the methodology with which they execute text criticism now, what is being compiled in the ECM, the Editio Critica Maior, which right now, like I have next to me, so I have the NA 28, right? So this is the 28th edition of the Nestle-Aland critical text, right? Which has a really huge apparatus. So you see the Greek text here. And then the footnotes, this is the textual apparatus, right? So we have a lot. So here we have all of the textual variants. So for each point in the text where there's some variant, some different reading, they say, okay, these manuscripts have this, these manuscripts have this. And if you don't know Greek, sorry, you can't access this, right? So we're working on that on Cross Bible, where English speakers will also have access to text critical resources. The point is that the ECM, they just released the book of Revelation. They've already done Mark. They've, this is their website went down. I was gonna display their website, but they it used to be able to access this online, and they've recently put it behind some kind of a registration wall, so I can't show it. But they are updating the Bible, so the Nestle-Aland 29th edition is going to be out later this year by the German Bible Society. I want to acquire it really bad and put it in Cross Bible. I have to license it. It'll probably be a premium resource. The Bible's being updated, people. The Revelation's being updated. Like the Greek text is being updated by the ECM using a new method, new computer-based tools.
You're right. Didn't you say that they're actually, so we formerly thought there were like, there's parts of for example, the King James has parts that people thought were not aligned with the original manuscripts. And these people were coming out and going, actually, there's some of the times they were actually on point, and it's actually the other way around. So the conclusions that they're coming to from the data is actually surprising people in certain areas where we thought
Yes.
there were the other case was wrong.
Yeah, it's
I would
like
love
it's
to
an
get
actually.
I would love to get one example of that real quick before we go.
Okay, I'll do it.
'Cause I know you have some examples of the King
Yeah,
James
so basic
where we
so,
thought they were wrong, and then it turned out to be they were actually spot on.
yeah. And so it's not that necessarily it's that the King James is right, or like, the Textus Receptus is right. It's that they've discovered that, okay, the Byzantine tradition that the Textus Receptus is based on, that the King James Bible was based on, it's everything coded in red in this timeline. This is like, and there's just a ton of them. Like this timeline only represents a fraction of them. It's just thousands. Like the Byzantines were, until they got conquered, they were just running off copies of the Bible like crazy, right? So when Constantinople fell and all those manuscripts flooded into Western Europe from the Byzantine Empire, all of a sudden the Europeans during the Renaissance, right? Like especially in Italy, they inherit all these Greek manuscripts and they're like, oh wow, we got all this Greek and it doesn't match Latin. We got to like update our Bibles. And so that was one of the sort of sparks that ignited the flame of the Protestant Reformation, was that they updated the Bible, and now all of a sudden the Catholic Bible like was no longer the authoritative text. They had a Greek version now that the Byzantines gave them, like the Eastern Orthodox gave them. And so, but when even though that became the received text for hundreds of years, it was like this new text, the new received text, the Textus Receptus, that was put together by Erasmus and then Beza and then the Elsevier brothers. That became the authoritative text until the 19th century, when they started discovering all of these Alexandrian manuscripts, and it was overthrown in Lockman, Tregelles, and Tischendorf and Westcott Hort. So they said, okay, now we got to wipe the slate clean, get rid of the Textus Receptus. It's bad. It's all because it's all based on these late manuscripts. And what textual critics are now discovering is that even though these manuscripts here that are read, even though they're late, because they date from the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th centuries, they do preserve, in certain instances, in certain readings and verses, they preserve some older tradition that's better than what we have over here. Even though we have older manuscripts, they have run it through their computer model, and they have concluded, based on what they call coherence, genealogical coherence, and other criteria that they've developed in the CBGM method, that the text, the Byzantines had it right all along. The Eastern Orthodox had it right all along, and Erasmus and like the King James had it right all along. And I'm talking about like, individual, like textual variants. And this is a big deal.
Because there's a few parts where people are like dunking over the King James people, which I think is pretty funny to do, because the King James only is obviously really like stupid, like
yeah.
But like there are a couple examples where the King James, according to these people, according to these scholars, with their approach and their methodological approach, are coming to a conclusion saying, actually, in this particular case, King James is more closer aligned to what the original, the oldest manuscripts say.
Yeah. So Acts 1:26, Keedogan Clerus Aftis or Afton. So, and they drew lots for them or of them. So autois, right, Aftis, is for them. That's the sort of canonical version. That's the, what we have in our Bibles most of the time. But then Afton, where literally the difference is between the ois ending and on ending, right? It's either like for them or of them. So is it the lots that belong to them, or is it the lots that were given to them? So this seems to mean that the 11 gave lots to or for two candidates, as per all of these critical Bibles, right? NA 28, UBS 5, the Society of Biblical Literature, Greek New Testament, Tyndale House. So all these authoritative scholarly editions that we've relied on for many, many years, they all had this. But the ECM, the Editio Critica Maior, that is being produced now based on computer algorithms from and this new methodology, the coherence-based genealogical method,
has vindicated the King James.
Yeah, that now follows the reading translated by the King James version, the Byzantine reading.
King James only is out there. Look at we gave you a slam dunk
and
right there.
And it's found in most later Greek witnesses, which says instead that they gave their lots edokan klirus afton, and the lot fell to Matthias. If the subject is still relevant here, then perhaps the word lots, klirus, could be understood as portions, as in the portion of the apostolic ministry that Judas fortified forfeited, and that was now being offered to Joseph or Matthias. So that's one example. There are many examples where they actually are now giving credence to the Byzantine text type when, if you read scholarly literature from the past, from the past century, people were shitting all over the Byzantine
even up
text.
to the last decade.
Yes.
Just recently, this is big push. Bart Ehrman's one of them, dunking all over King James onlyists in the Byzantine text and all that. And now, but you're saying that they're all going to have to chew on their own words now.
I have asked Bart Ehrman about this through Derek and I can't remember which interview it was he did with Bart Ehrman, and I asked him about the ECM, and he was just like, first of all, I don't understand the ECM, or I don't understand the coherence-based. He said, I don't understand the coherence-based genealogical method, and I don't think the people who are actually doing the coherence-based genealogical method understand it. That was his opinion.
That reminds me of someone going, "Oh, I don't understand evolution. It's just so silly and dumb to me. I don't know. I don't understand it. What, we came from apes? That's dumb." Like, you don't.
I hope I'm not.
No offense to Bart, but you not understanding something doesn't make it incorrect. I
hope I'm not misquoting. Yeah, I hope I'm not misquoting him. But as far as I remember, that was more or less verbatim what he had to say about it. Yeah, because he's the old guard.
Yeah, of course. He does this in so many subjects. When you bring to him new scholarship that has to do with, I don't know, gods, some scholar comparing the Bible to Dionysus or something, he pushes back. He's an old guard. He pushes back.
Look, this is the text of the New Testament by Bruce Metzger and Bart Ehrman. You can get it on the study resources page. So
right there.
This is a very a lot of the videos that I produced. Like, you go on the Cross Bible official YouTube channel. Subscribe, please. Like this video too. It's subscribe. This book written by Bart Ehrman and Bruce Metzger, his teacher, his professor, right? Bruce Metzger was his mentor. This is considered a little bit out of date when you go to, Peter Gurry, Tom Wasserman, a new approach to textual criticism and myths and mistakes in New Testament textual criticism. So this field right now of textual criticism that's reconstructing the Bible, it is completely being overhauled right now.
That's
and
awesome.
people who are just sort of reading their Bibles and going about their day, they don't understand.
They have no idea.
The Bible's about to change. Yeah. The Greek Bible is going to change, and then all of the translations, the new versions of the NASB, the NIV, they're
what about
all
the SBL's newest Bible? Are they following the CDM?
The CBGM.
CBGM? SBL just came out with a new Bible. Are they following what you're talking about, or are they pushing back?
Let me show the timeline once more, and then if we do another episode dedicated to this,
we'll jump on this. We'll immediately go to this next live. We'll do it next week if you want. I'm down.
Okay, perfect. So basically, the UBS, the United Bible Society's edition that's going to come, they're going to publish the 6th version.
There's the SBL GNT right there.
The Nestle Aland is going to publish its 29th edition, and then the SBL is going to follow. So these are 3 Bible societies that print the Greek text that all the translators rely on. Mm-hmm. They are in lockstep. So every time, the 28th edition of the Nestle Aland matches the UBS version exactly. They just have different, this is it. So this is the UBS 5, and this is the NA 28. These are the same Greek text. The only difference is the apparatus. So down here, you get different footnotes. Right. These footnotes are simple. This is for translators. So basically what's going to happen is, as the ECM plows through the Bible and finishes the project's slated for completion in 2030 something, 2030, I think.
It's going to take a long time.
So when they finish, basically the 29th edition and the 6th edition of this and the 29th edition of this, they're going to be updated based on the ECM. So the text of Revelation is going to change. The text of the books that they finished.
Nobody's following this right now. No one's assuming any of this yet. They're waiting for it to be finished. So but my question is, SBL just came out with a new Bible. Are they reflecting the data that has been
not yet?
So no. Okay. So their new Bible, their brand new Bible that they just came out with, is probably going to have to change in 5 to 10 years.
All the Bibles are going to have to change.
Yeah.
So this is the ECM. This is the Editio Critica Maior.
Why even produce a new Bible right now? Why wouldn't people just wait for this data to come out?
Because
why would you waste
they're
your
trying
time?
they're milking their
They're
IP.
trying to
They're
make some
milking,
money, right?
They're milking the SBL. So the SBL has been fixed for a long time, and and it's in the public domain, and they are able to produce translations of it and produce, they can produce a new Bible with different footnotes and scholarship, and they can update the footnotes of the Bible, but they're not updating the text of the Bible. But
right, that's a good point.
This is going to flow
This is going to change
back.
the text of the Bible, right?
Yeah, it's going to flow back into the NA29 and the UBS 6. Those are coming out later this year. It's coming this year, but it's not finished. And so basically in 2028, 2029, basically in the 2030s, it'll be in our lifetime, hopefully, we'll see the completion of the ECM. AI is probably going to make a difference. They're going to continue to evolve. And that's the thing. If you're a King James onlyist, this is absolute lunacy, right? For them, the Bible was fixed in the 17th century. For them,
right.
It's like, that's it. It was printed. It was done. It was like Erasmus did his job, and
but I know I went to a King James only church, and I know how they act. They're going to cherry pick everything that vindicates them. They're going to talk about. Yeah. They're going to go, you see what the scholars said about this right here, that this verse right here is actually the real one, and this one right here, and then they're just going to ignore all the stuff that just goes against.
Well, and meanwhile, if a lot of people in the audience are really into this whole Greek and Hebrew debate and the Amon Hillman stuff, there's a whole flame war going on right now in the YouTube space, in scholarship. There are people who are on the side of this ECM project, and they're all in on the ECM and the CBGM, and this whole throwing text types out of the window, and this is the new guard is going to be this. But there is also a conservative strain that is we don't like this innovation. We don't like AI and computers, and and there's also the people who are
coherence-based genealogical method. Wow.
CBGM. Yeah. And that is producing the ECM, and the ECM is going to be the new standard. Everybody's going to fall in line. For the Nestle Island, the United Bible Society, UBS, Greek New Testament, GNT, and the Society of Biblical Literature, Greek New Testament, they're all going to get updated to fit. I
might even tonight go and try to read about the methodology behind it, and instead of just being like Bart Ehrman and just throw my hands up, I want to actually understand what's going on here. I want to be able to know why they're doing this.
This is a really good book. It's very thin. It's a little complicated. I've read it a few times to try to wrap my head around it. And the next time we do a stream, if people are interested, make sure you tune in. I'll do a slideshow where I will try to simplify this and break it down.
I want to explain why we know the Bible is going to change in the next decade. That's what I want to do a whole stream on.
So whoever's left here, if this is a topic that interests you, go to Cross Bible, look this stuff up, read about this, go into the timeline and open this stuff up and read about this. Look at my study resources, get a copy of this book, A New Approach to Textual Criticism. And then we'll go through a slideshow where I will attempt to sort of put this in layman's terms and simplify it for the people who are, not scholars, but who are, curious and interested in this sort of thing.
That's awesome. And I see people are dropping the link in the description. I appreciate that, everyone. Let's do, okay, we got 2 more super chats and let's get out of here. I just want to promote, I do want to show, first of all, Cross Bible. Get on the website.
Patreon, please. Anybody
up here, see how you get your own profile. I got my own profile going. I recommend that as well. Also, real quick, before we do the last couple of super chats, I just want people to see that there is your channel, Cross Bible. So definitely go subscribe and be on the lookout for this new video coming out in the next couple of days. Let's do the last 2 super chats. I'll leave this on the screen while we're doing these. So people can see it. And then, links in the description. If you can't find it, you don't want to look it up, click on the description, click right on the link, Cross Bible. Anyways, the last one was about psychedelics. Eric Shaver, thank you again for the super chat. Is it possible they fabricated the resurrection? Very possible. I think that's a very solid hypothesis, right? He's not talking about the crucifixion. He's talking about the resurrection. right? I mean, what else? What do you want me to say? No, I mean, of course it could have fabricated it. What do you think?
Anything's possible. For the record, I am a Christian, but I'm sort of more like, I tend to have an open mind about things and try to follow where the evidence leads.
Good answer. Very good politically correct answer. I'm just kidding. Solera Knight says, thank you for the super chat. Could AI form an all-encompassing religion that supersedes all others using science and logic as an ultimate folklore?
Yeah. Eventually.
No, that's true. AI could do it.
AGI could do it.
I think I think people will make AI into that position because people are, I mean, just look at the way people ask Grok every question on Twitter. Grok, what does this mean? Grok, is this true? Grok, tell me about that. Like, the Grok is a god already. Grok is the oracle. Grok is the oracle of Delphi on Twitter. So I think this is a good question, and I think this is definitely in the cards for humanity. Is an AI oracle. I mean, think about this. The ancients, if you could tell them in thousands of years that are going to go by, 2,500 years, we're talking about 500 BC, 2,500 years is going to go by. People back then in 500 BC all knew about the Oracle of Delphi, the all-knowing oracle. Imagine telling them that you'll be able to touch a screen, a plasma screen, and ask them any question about the world, and it'll tell you the answer. This is called the Oracle of X. And they'll be like, oh, which god is this? Should I offer a sacrifice to him? What do we do? They would think it's a god. This would be a god. So I don't think that this question is crazy. I think this is something people legitimately will consider in the future.
Oh, and by the way, that video, so I'll put a link in the description too. The video that has the hand pulling the Bible out that's like in flames, that's on my channel right there. That's about the Codex Sinaiticus and the critical text. The end of that video is dedicated to, the CBGM and ECM. Like I do just, elaborate on some of that in that video right there, the Codex Sinaiticus one. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see what you got coming out. Once again, make sure you guys subscribe to Cross Bible. And anything else you want to say before we go? We'll do it. We got two more streams that you and I are going to do very soon.
Yeah.
One of them is going to be which one again?
So we'll do one to follow up on this one to delve into the ECM and the CBGM.
Yes.
And then we'll do one as soon as I release the full Greek Easter interview for the public. Right now it's on Patreon, so if you can spare $5, go watch it on Patreon right now. But if you can't wait a week or so, maybe I'll make it public on YouTube, and then you and I can do a watch party where we sort of discuss what we think about the answers that Father Evangelos gave to some of these questions.
Yeah, I can't wait. By the way, this is so weird. We're talking about King James only. I have a video that was saved in my, you know how you can put videos, upload them into your StreamYard thing?
Yeah.
I have one from my old King James only pastor. I don't even know what it is. I know it's something crazy that he said that I was trying to show everybody in my early Gnostic informant, like atheist type of days. I'm just going to play it. It's only 13 seconds. I want to see what he says.
All right.
This is a King James onlyist.
But if you gave me an AK-47 right now with enough ammo to take all of you out, and before I did it, I started blaspheming the Holy Ghost's name and then took you out and then put the gun in my mouth, I still end up in heaven.
Oh, I forgot how nasty that was. Did you see the 1611 on the wall? Notice on the top left, you see 1611.
But if you gave me an AK-47 right now with enough ammo to take all of you out, but if you gave me an AK-47.
AV 1611, you know what that means?
AV 1611, yeah, the authorized version, King James 1611.
Authorized version 1611. It's the King. He has it on the wall like it's a cross, like it's like theological. AV 1611, King James. That's the type of church I was at. It was crazy. Anyways, I think you got to go. You got to take your dog out. So, anything? Last thoughts?
You've just attained true gnosis. Thank you.
True gnosis.
You have just attained true gnosis. The demiurge has